an open session to vote on a motion to go into closed session pursuant to Section 305B3 of the General Provisions Article of the Annotated Code of Maryland to consider the acquisition of real property for a public purpose and matters directly related to the acquisition. The topic is roadway expansion or extension, and our meeting number is 3523. May I get a motion to go into closed session? Second? All right, second. All in favor? Aye. It is unanimous. Good evening, Rockville. Today is Monday, December 18th, and I will call to order meeting number 35-23. Please join us as you're able for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. We'll be moving to agenda number 3, agenda review. Madam Clerk, do we have any changes to the agenda today?
Madam Mayor and council members, we have no changes to the agenda, but the city manager does have a report for this evening.
Thank you. Welcome, Mrs.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. We have good news on the grants front. City of Rockville, in partnership with VisArts, was awarded $25,000 in November to develop an arts-based pedestrian safety project that will enhance a section of Gibbs Street between North Washington Street and Maryland Avenue. The initiative aims to improve street safety and revitalize public space, bringing color and character to Beale Avenue. In the coming months, the city and VisArts will work to prepare designs for the streetscape and safety improvements in the site area, and then issue a call for artists to submit mural design ideas. Additionally, the City of Rockville's Vision Zero intersection safety audits application earned approval of $320,000 in funding through the U.S. Department of Transportation's Safe Streets and Roads for All grant program. The city will advance the ongoing Vision Zero intersection safety audit project, wherein the city will evaluate and analyze intersections with the history of crashes and propose roadway enhancements to improve safety for people walking, rolling, driving, bicycling, and using transit. The awarded project includes evaluation of 30 intersections in Rockville. 20 of the proposed intersections are owned and maintained by Maryland Department of Transportation State Highway Administration, and the remaining 10 intersections are owned and maintained by the City of Rockville, creating another opportunity for the city to partner with MDOT SHA to improve roadway safety. Special thanks to Principal Transportation Planner Brian Barnett Woods, who spearheaded the effort to secure the grant in collaboration with other Department of Public Works, Transportation, and Traffic and Transportation Division staff. Rockville's water once again met or exceeded all federal water quality regulation limits as announced in the annual Drinking Water Quality Report. The city's water treatment plant on the banks of the Potomac River serves 70% of Rockville, or approximately 13,000 accounts, and 52,000 community members. We thank the dedicated staff who consistently excel at providing this very important service to the Rockville community. I am pleased to report that Rockville has once again scored 100, the maximum score on the Human Rights Campaign Municipal Equality Index, MEI, for the city's commitment to the health, welfare, safety, and equality of its lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer community. The MEI, released annually in November, scores 506 cities across the nation on their non-discrimination laws, law enforcement, employment and workplace inclusivity, leadership, and services to the LGBTQ+ community. We commend all of our elected officials, staff, and community members who support and implement Rockville's policies that have led to the superior rating for this segment of our diverse population for years. The application process for community organization grants is now open for the 2025 fiscal year. The City of Rockville provides grants annually to local organizations that partner with the city to enhance quality of life for Rockville residents. The online application is due Monday, January 8th, and is now available on the city's website. A new ordinance that requires specific residential rental properties in the city to be tested for the presence of radon went into effect this fall. As many know, radon is invisible, odorless, tasteless, radioactive gas found in soil and rock. While no immediate symptoms signal its presence, exposure at high levels can cause cancer. Testing is the only way to know a home's radon levels. The testing requirement applies to all units in a residential rental facility in contact with the ground, including basement apartments and any dwelling unit with a basement, crawl space, or built-on slab in contact with the ground. Landlords are required to conduct a radon test before leasing a qualifying dwelling unit. For more information about radon testing, community members can visit the city's website. We encourage everyone to take advantage of the many holiday celebrations and events that will be happening in the near future. Details for these and many other holiday happenings can be found in December Rockville reports or on the city's website. Thank you, and this concludes my report for this evening.
Thank you very much. I also wanted to add that I think it was Saturday that the Department of Housing and Community Development gave out more than 1,000 gift cards to support children in need. Do you want to say anything else about that?
No, thank you. You did very well.
And I want to thank all the Rockville donors who helped out on that. Does anyone have any questions? I will also just note that the Bloomberg grant sounds like it's just $25,000, but it's very competitive and it comes with a lot of technical assistance. So it's an opportunity to look at how do we infuse arts but also safety into the community. So thank you and congrats to staff, and also congrats on all the other accolades helping our city shine bright. Thank you. Dr. Miles.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I did want to highlight, as you correctly did, that VisArt's role in the mural piece. I know there was a push to have VisArts look for outside sources for funding and such, and although this is collaborative outside the institution, I did want to recognize all their work on it as well. And then, I mean, it seemed kind of banal, but the water stuff is huge. I mean, I drink tap water straight out the tap, so super boring until something doesn't go right, like Flint, right? So kudos to all that you all do in that regard too. Thank you.
Our water is among the best. So I do want to move on to the next agenda item unless there's any other questions. Proclamations and recognitions. We are pleased to recognize Councilmember Mark Prochela, who has served many, many years. We'll be doing that in a minute. And then we'll also be doing a proclamation declaring December as Small Business Month, read by Councilmember Valeri, and we'll hear as well on Kwanzaa, led by Councilmember Shaw. So if we could move to the front, please, and we'll get that done. Councilmember Prochela, would you like to come up with your family? Welcome.
Madam Mayor?
It's so good to see you. Yes.
Good to see you all. All right, you don't have me to kick around anymore?
Councilmember Prochela, a friend and colleague, I want to read you a certificate of recognition, and it's my honor to do so. Mark has served on council for many years and has been involved in community associations for many years. We appreciate all that you've given to our city. We personally know how many sleepless nights and early mornings you've had, and we hope this is a small token that you can remember us and continue to stay involved. Whereas Mark Prochela has served the city of Rockville with distinction for many years, and his knowledge of city issues and his compassion for the residents of Rockville are without equal. And whereas Mark Prochela advocated for commercially affordable homes near transit centers and along transit corridors, including contested projects such as the Bainbridge near Shady Grove Metro and Twinbrook Corridor near Twinbrook Metro, and raised the awareness of the need to provide a much larger housing supply for our young adults and professionals. And whereas Mark Prochela championed the cause of economic development and served as liaison to Rockville Economic Development Incorporated for 4 years, and also helped to make sure that READY was funded, bringing choice hotels, international to Rockville's Town Center, an attraction that also supported the current Town Center Boulevard 44 apartments with its Cambria Suites Hotel, and Boulevard Ansel apartments, including the residences on the lane. And whereas Mark Priscilla was the liaison to the Cultural Arts Commission, Rockville Housing Enterprises, the Human Services Advisory Commission, the Environmental Commission, the Recreation and Parks Advisory Board, Rockville Bike Advisory Committee, and also biked many, many streets in Rockville, all of them in fact, and was a member of the Retirement Board. And whereas Mark Priscilla always has been a friend of seniors and a protector of all of Rockville's neighborhoods, and he is a strong advocate for biking and pedestrian safety. And he has biked every street in Rockville at least 6 times and walked every street in Rockville once, and informally documented efforts to gain and maintain a mental image of all of Rockville. Now, therefore, the Mayor and Council of the City of Rockville, Maryland, do hereby recognize Mark Priscilla's 16 years of dedicated service and tireless commitment and service to the residents of Rockville, Maryland, as well as the surrounding community. Will someone please move this certificate?
I move. A second.
Wonderful. Mark Priscilla, it's an honor. Thank you.
Thank you.
for your
Thank you,
service.
Madam Mayor.
Back. All those in favor? I knew it will be unanimous there. We also present to you the key of the city, so you can sneak in at night.
Wow, that's
It says,
great.
Councilor Mark Priscilla, for your unwavering 16 years of service to the city of Rockville.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You want Leslie to come up?
Well, I gotta do a speech first. Thank you. Somewhere along the way, they gave me 4 extra years. I was on the council 12 years total out of 14. So, but you know, it seemed like 16 years. All right. Thank you, Madam Mayor, for reading the recognition. I've run in 7 straight campaigns. The campaign in 2023 was my last. I'm closing my campaign accounts and tossing or donating all my campaign materials. I wish to congratulate Monique Ashton as Rockville's new mayor and council members Kate Fulton, Adam Van Grack, Barry Jackson, Isola Shaw, Marissa Valeri, and returning council member Dr. David Miles. I want to thank the following people who have supported me all these years. Leslie Cross, my wife, who is in the audience, and my daughters Esme and Vita, and the rest of my family. The voters who put me in office. The elected colleagues that I have served with, and Beryl, thank you for coming tonight. Appreciate that. I also wish to thank my campaign team, a small but excellent group that did their best to smooth over my rough edges. Well, good luck with that. The Board of Supervisors of Elections, who did a great job in running Rockville's second vote-by-mail election. The Office of the City Clerk, Director of Council Operations, who also did great work in running the election in addition to numerous other duties. And excellent city staff of professionals, experts in their respective fields. All the city residents who have participated in boards and commissions and who have testified in hearings or in community forums over the years. We listened whether we agreed or not, and by that number runs into the thousands over those years. I also want to acknowledge that in my time in office, 3 members of the Department of Public Works have died on the job. This was hard to take. Some city jobs are physically challenging and some are dangerous. We should recognize the people who police us, who dig us out of snowstorms, who collect the trash, and who fix the water main breaks, among other things. Personally, I'm moving on to other things. I'm still figuring this out. Certainly, you will hear from me on the I-270 issue, the upcoming zoning ordinance, the Town Center Master Plan, and the King Farm Farmstead and Gardens. And good luck with the budgeting. The capital budget is a mess. I have a suggested New Year's resolution for the new elected body. Respect the city charter and code and respect the proper roles of the elected versus those of city staff. And indeed, respect city staff. Mayor and council are a policy body, not an executive body. The city manager is the city's chief executive officer. I hope and expect that this newly elected body will be the one that shows the way. Once again, I thank you all for this recognition. Yeah.
Leslie, will you come up? This is a special one.
All right. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Thank you.
You've been getting up very nicely on time, right?
Spring's eternal.
All right. Next, we will have Councilmember Marissa Valeri to talk to us about a proclamation on Small Business Saturdays.
Y'all can just call me Marissa. I'm much more comfortable that way. Nearly half of Rockville's businesses are small and micro businesses, and many of them survived COVID when other large businesses did not. They're resilient, but they need our support. So everybody commit to going to one small business, buying just one thing, and if everybody does that, we can support our small businesses. Whereas the City of Rockville, Maryland celebrates our local small businesses and the contributions they make to our local economy and community. According to the United States Small Business Administration, there are currently 33.2 million small businesses in the United States, which represent 99.7% of all businesses with employees in the United States. And whereas small businesses employ 46.4% of the employees in the private sector in the United States, and whereas small businesses have a positive impact on their community by creating jobs, contributing to local charities, organizing and sponsoring local events within their community, and whereas small businesses encourage, support, and strengthen local supply chains, and whereas the City of Rockville, Maryland supports our local businesses that create jobs, boost our local economy, and preserve our communities. And now, therefore, the Mayor and Council of the City of Rockville, Maryland do hereby proclaim December 2023 as Small Business Month and urge the Rockville community and communities across the country to support small businesses and merchants during Small Business Month and throughout the year. What was it? I don't think I did. No. Do I have a motion to move it? No, I move it. Sorry. I'm new at this. I move the proclamation. Do I have a second? All those in favor? I think it's unanimous.
Councilmember Shaw will take us in a recognition of Kwanzaa.
And Madam Mayor and Councilmember Miles, could you join me? Habari Gani, which means how are you? This greeting is often used to open the ceremony of Kwanzaa's 7 days, and it is my honor to present the Kwanzaa Proclamation. Whereas Kwanzaa is an annual celebration of African American culture born out of the turbulent civil rights era of the 1960s, and
whereas Kwanzaa was created by Dr. Maulana Karenga based on African Harvest Festival traditions from various parts of Africa, including West and Southern Africa, and celebrated first in 1966. And
whereas Kwanzaa is observed for 7 days from December 26th through January 1st. And
Whereas the name Kwanzaa derives from the Kiswahili phrase Matunda ya Kwanzaa, which means first fruits. And whereas the 7 principal days of Kwanzaa are Day 1, Umoja, unity. Day 2, Kujitagalia, which means self-determination. Day 3, Ujima, which means collective work and responsibility. Day 4, Ujama, which means cooperative economics. Day 5, Nia, which means purpose. Day 6, Kumba, which means creativity. Day 7, Imani, which means faith. And
Whereas on the 7th day of the celebration, gifts are given to encourage growth, achievement, and success. Handmade or culturally significant gifts are exchanged to promote self-determination, purpose, creativity, and love.
now, therefore, the mayor and council hereby proclaim and observe December 26, 2023 through January 1st, 2024 as Kwanzaa in Rockville, and invite all residents to understand its principles and enjoy the celebration of the first fruits of the year, and to practice the 7 principles all year round. The city encourages everyone to share in this festive season and to spread love to all residents of Rockville and beyond. I move the proclamation.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Put this with Sarah.
You all join together and Kathy is going to take a picture. Oh, you're up all.
She is on it. All right.
Do you want me to? Yeah, another one. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Hold on. Let me get it straight. You gotta keep going back. It's a bigger group. Hope nobody's behind me. Okay, 1, 2, 3. One more. 1, 2, 3. All right, thank you. Thank you, everyone. We'll now move to agenda item 6, and we'll entertain boards and commissions reappointments. We have 2 that we'd like to reappoint that I put forth for the Historic District Commission. Anita Neal Powell, reappointment to serve a 3-year term until December 1, 2026. And Mercy Shenge, a reappointment to serve a 3-year term until December 1, 2026. Dr. Miles.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to, for the reappointment of Ms. Anita Neal Powell and Ms. Mercy Singh for the Historic District Commission to serve 3-year terms until December 1st, 2026.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Councilmember Valeri seconds. All those in favor?
Aye.
It is unanimous. Thank you very much, Ms. Anita Neal Powell. I recognize you. I see you're here, as well as Commissioner Mercy Shent. Thank you for serving. There'll be more appointments coming soon. This is now a time to hear from our community. We'll open up community forum. And I'm going to say the next 3 names because I know some people are in the overflow room. So I want to give you some time to be able to come forward. So we're going to hear from Amina Rogers of HRC, Rebecca Murphy, and Raid Taye. Welcome.
Hi there. Assalamu alaikum. Peace be upon you. My name is Amina Shafi Rogers, and though I'm part of the Human Rights Commission, I'm speaking today in my personal capacity.
May I also say Malaikum Shalom.
Thank you very much. I wanted to share a few things today about the resolution that we have under consideration, and also share a few aspects of my background and why I think it's important to speak today. As I mentioned, my name is Amina. I'm a proud Muslim American, a Pakistani American, and a resident of the city of Rockville. Very proud to be in Rockville. And I want to share that I also have extensive background in international law. So where I'm coming from is not necessarily an emotional response. It's more of a jurisprudence-based response. I have been trained as an attorney in the following areas of law: U.S. and international human rights law, international humanitarian law, including a focus in armed conflict, humanitarian aid, use of force law, U.S. international refugee and asylum law, and international criminal law, including a focus on war crimes and genocide. And I say this because I think there's a lot of charged sentiment around these words, but there's agreed upon definitions of what they are, and I wanted to share in solidarity with Jewish and Muslim American communities that ceasefire does not mean genocide, and genocide is not anti-Semitic or anti-Jewish. We have a really important resolution to discuss today, and I think while it's has very good intentions, there could be some modifications and an acknowledgement of the global issues that are giving rise to the local context. Some of you know we had a multi-faith demonstration and a very vile counter-protest, I think it was November 5th or 7th, and which gave rise to really terrible language that was used around children, and folks identifying as Israeli Americans were demeaning those who were at the protest and making note of their Muslim and Palestinian ethnicity. So I think it's important that the resolution provides a context, otherwise it seems vacuous and just out of the blue. There needs to be an acknowledgement that the issues that are occurring in Israel and Palestine are reason for impact in this community and why we have this resolution. I have some notes from colleagues who weren't able to come, friends who are Palestinian American and Jewish who are not able to come, and I have some specific suggestions if you are welcome or interested in hearing those, or I'm not sure what the appropriate forum is to share them now or to submit them in writing later in case we do pass the resolution today. So let me know kind of what is the most appropriate response or suggestion.
I know that we're running on time, but perhaps we could give them to our city clerk, and she
Okay.
can make copies for all of us.
Yes,
That's okay.
definitely. The second thing I wanted to note, aside from the resolution, is that as an international lawyer, and the reason I referenced my credentials in the beginning of this is to let you know that cycles of history, and when we go through the Nuremberg trials, Rwanda, Civil Rights Act, Civil Rights Movement, things that happened in South Africa during the apartheid, there will be an inquiry into what is going on today related to the Palestinian genocide and the Israeli government military issues that are focused on the civilians, everything that's happening. There will be an inquiry, and there will be it's important. What I'm trying to say is it's important for the city of Rockville to be on the right side of history and to make sure and consider following suit with cities like Austin, Berkeley to actually establish a permanent ceasefire resolution among the city of Rockville. Thank you.
Commissioner Rogers. I want to just note that everyone has 3 minutes. There is a clock up here, so I'll try to give you a reminder in case I know that we're talking about some very important topics. And I appreciate everyone's cooperation. Next, we'll hear from Rebecca Murphy. Okay, thank you very much. Raid Taye, followed by Richard Scheimel.
Good evening. My name is Raid Taye, and I'm a local attorney. And I come here to support the resolution that is before you. The resolution that is rejecting anti-Arabism, anti-Semitism, and Islamophobia in the city of Rockville. I was at this November 5th interfaith rally that happened in the plaza here, just a few hundred yards away. where we were with family members. I brought my 10-year-old kid. There were kids in strollers. And unexpectedly, a group of very aggressive, very vile counter-protesters showed up, hurling literal death threats. We will cut your heads off, espousing anti-Muslim, anti-Palestinian, even homophobic slurs. They were throwing the kitchen sink. Assaults occurred. I myself experienced an assault, and although it was mild, it did occur. And so this resolution, speaking from your dais and from your vantage point, is really important to let the residents and those who interact with this city truly know that hate has no place in any form. And that those words are also backed up by actions, the actions of the police who were present that day and who were told about the assaults and neither did anything at the time of the protests nor followed up afterwards. And so we have to kind of have a whole of government approach if we really mean hate has no place. At the same time, as a fervent advocate of the First Amendment, we have to be careful to not label political speech as hate speech only at the urging of one side or another. As we all know, we have to endure a little offense and being offended by words that we disagree with and words we don't like or political positions that we don't agree with. And one statement that has really caught attention is a statement called "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free," a statement that I wholly support. The Palestinian people, who are far away from Rockville, right? But they live between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean Sea. They are occupied. They do not have equal rights with the other residents of that area. And so Palestinian voices, Muslim voices, Jewish voices, atheist voices in our community are raising this slogan, yet it is being labeled in our schools and elsewhere as anti-Semitic at the urging of some groups. So I would urge you, as you consider these matters, not to fall in the hopes of helping to support people who feel they're being targeted by hate, not to succumb to the labeling of political speech as hate speech. And finally, as a technical matter, I would urge you to amend the resolution to include anti-Palestinian acts, because anti-Arab is really not enough. The Arab world consists of 22 countries, and the hate that we are seeing is specifically anti-Palestinian. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your remarks. Richard Schimmel,
Thank you.
followed by Martine Sajor. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm here actually on behalf of the National Association for Recreational Equality, which advocates universal design in terms of walk-in inclusion, recreational facilities for the disabled and for the autistic. And at the current time, bank shot basketball seems to be the best option, but our organization is open to other suggestions that the mayor, the city council, or the Department of Parks and Rec has to offer. I would point out that bank shot is not only basketball. Rabbi Brenner has actually developed bank shot soccer and bank shot tennis, and we look forward to the day that we can trot out those, hopefully in Redgate Park, which is one of the things that we want to address. Now, we also we would also remind you that April is Autism Month, and before COVID, we would have an event in April at the King Farm facility, which we'd like to reinstall. We don't call it a shootout because that's not proper. We call it a shoot around, and we had Safeway and the original Pancake House as sponsors, and the city of Rockville as well. We'd like to institute that again and invite members of the community to see exactly what the bank shot basketball has to offer. I'd also suggest the city of Rockville needs to do a better job publicizing the existing bank shot courts in King Farm and Montrose Park. I'm gratified to see that there's actually on page 62 there's actually a reference to the handicap, but there's no page or feature for bank shot basketball, and it really is a gem for the city. So we'd like to see that actually publicized in the newsletter. Now, former mayor, city manager Rob DeSprito suggested that a logical place to install bank shot courts was the recreational centers throughout Rockville, which are fully staffed and which would allow staff to organize and run bank shot play court events, training sessions, tournaments, etc. on a regular basis. And he suggested the Rockville Recreational Center. He estimated that the cost for such relocation project would be about $25,000 to $50,000, and he anticipated something like this could be done within 1 year's time. So we'd encourage you, when you're sharpening your pencils on your budget, to consider that, particularly the Redgate community. Bank shot courts have been installed in many cities throughout the country, throughout the world, and they are well utilized by communities where the courts have been installed. I know that we had a problem with the swim center. Got some disparaging remarks about whether the swim center was well utilized. It is well utilized. It's now empty, and we would like to have it reinstalled as well. I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Is Martine available? Martine Sejour, and then Savannah. Can you tell me the pronunciation so I can get your last name correct?
Martine Sejour.
Sejour. Thank you very much.
Yes, French Haitian. My name is Martine E. Sejour. I'm a mother of 2 adult children, one who has autism. I'm also one who was present at the inauguration and first day of Bank Shot when it was open at the swim center in the 90s. I have been keeping a close watch, monitoring the growth of the game, and remember its popularity at Walsh Park. I can say what others have said, that Bank Shot brought families together, including families with differently abled children. This was the reality for many years for neighbors coming to the swim center to play Bank Shot and to take a swim too. There are many of us who wish the administration would reconsider Bank Shot, returning to the swim center, and also to continue the programs and the outreach previously so well received and successful. These were dropped by the current Recreation Department. I come to this forum to ask the new Rockville leadership to look into this request on behalf of the underserved neighbors with disabilities and limitations. There should be, as previously, no cost for the visitors at the Bank Shot Play Court amenity. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Savannah Sejour?
Hi, good evening. My name is Savannah Sejour. This review and commentary, which I'm about to read, comes from 2 important nearby organizations. These agencies support and better the lives of the differently abled, including individuals with autism. The National Association for Recreational Equality in Rockville serves that purpose, and the Reverend Maynard Moore runs the organization called Interplay, which stages and performs theater for cognitively challenged performers. Both organizations do excellent work in the community for the differently abled. The following review and commentary has been compiled by them. All of this information is also online at the Rockville Archives. The significant event, Reversing the Inclusive Outreach, began with the unfortunate accident at the Bank Shot Play Court, regrettably just at the time the current park manager arrived in Rockville. The new director, Mr. Chestnut, failed to do the necessary and appropriate research. When the accident occurred in the Bank Shot Play Court at the swim center, the gates were then locked and the successful outreach to the differently abled abruptly discontinued. Children who frequented at the swim center Bank Shot Play Court were deeply disappointed. We contend that the previous good work of the outreach should be resumed and the Bank Shot Family Play Court reinstalled. Also, the Rockville Recreation Guide should not continue to ignore the differently able. Since the accident, a visiting family with differently able children opens up the Rockville Recreation Guide and sees nothing. Cost-free recreation in Rockville isn't even mentioned. The Bank Shot was so successful at the swim center that the city began to put the amenity in other parks, such as Montrose and Kings Farm. Rockville should not go unmentioned in our Rockville guides. The Bank Shot Play Court at the Kings Farm is always busy, even without mention of it in print anywhere. Only word of mouth informs which does not reach everyone with disabilities. Mr. Chestnut and staff were unfamiliar with the good work of their predecessors and their accomplishments on behalf of the differently able, which led to a regrettable change in direction from universal design to exclusion. The documentation was also delivered to our new mayor and council a few days ago, focusing upon the important testimony regarding Rockville's actions. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you. We'll hear from Josh French, followed by Robert Ekman.
Mr. French isn't here.
Okay, thank
I
you.
can submit for him.
Thank you. Mr. Robert Ekman and Hiba Awad.
Emotional support.
Welcome.
Motion. Good evening, Mayor Ashton and council members. I am Bob Ekman, trustee president of the Rockville Science Center. I'm here tonight to give you an update on our center and our makerspace, both of which are located in the town center. For those of you who are not familiar with the center, our mission is to bring the world of science, technology, engineering, and math to people of all ages and backgrounds in our community. Our nonprofit organization was incorporated in 2009 and moved into our storefront location at Rockville Town Square in 2020. Since that time, despite hurdles posed by the pandemic, and our resourceful staff and dedicated volunteers have worked to expand our programs and increase the number of people that we serve. We pride ourselves that in spite of limited budget, we are able to keep programs fees low, ensuring that they remain affordable for all and even offer scholarships for those in need. The City of Rockville has played a pivotal role in the continued presence of the Rockville Science Center through generous grants, which helped us maintain our programs, along with grant donations and program fees. Our concern mounts, however, that rising expense for rent, utilities, insurance will hinder our ability to gain in the coming years. We look forward to applying for continued funding in FY25 and welcome the opportunity to meet with the mayor and council to explore ways that we can work together to maximize the impact of our funds. The key here is to find a way to dedicate our resources to programs and staffing and not to facilities. The Rockville Science Center offerings reach far beyond what the schools and other classes and programs covering a wide range of topics from robotics and rocketry to artificial intelligence to neuroscience. Our classes offer hands-on learning in small groups, and we also engage many adults through our online lectures and other programs. We are especially proud of our high school engineering teams, which constantly rank among the best in the nation. Our makerspace is a haven for anyone in our community who would like to stop by and work on a project. We provide the tools and space for individuals and groups to further their skills, explore new ideas, and even collaborate with scientists and engineers in our community. Through our programs, we engage thousands of children, teens, and adults every year. Our signature event is Rockville Science Day, which attracts about 100 exhibitors and from around the region and 3,000 to 4,000 visitors in April. We hope that you will make plans to join us at Montgomery College on April 21st. In the meantime, I invite you to visit our center almost any afternoon or evening and watch our community engage in science, learning together, and having fun. Thank you, and look forward to continuing the conversation about how we can work together to keep science in Rockville. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll next hear from Hiba Awad. And please feel free to correct the pronunciation. Appreciate that. After that, we'll hear from Pat Martin.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of the council. In the name of God, most gracious, most merciful, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. My name is Dr. Hiba Awad. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk to you today. By adopting the anti-Arabism, anti-Semitism, and anti-Islamophobia resolution, you have the power to make every person in our city feel safer. I'm a Palestinian American Muslim, and I am proud of each one of those identities. For some haters that are out there, my mere existence is inappropriate. Talking about myself is inappropriate. Our community is feeling the pain of hate. We're feeling the pain of hate crimes. We're feeling the pain of hate speech. On October 19th, 28 members of my family were killed by an Israeli airstrike while they were in their home in Gaza. The remaining members of my family that are alive in Gaza are all displaced. I have an aunt. We don't know anything about her in the past 10 days. We pray that she's alive. They're being denied their basic human rights as we speak right now. Recent calls for a Palestine that is free from occupation and free from oppression have been labeled as hate speech. So I'm here today to thank you for considering adopting this resolution to reject anti-Arabism, anti-Semitism, and anti-Islamophobia. Thank you for making me feel safe to come here today and to express myself, to talk about the rights of my family in Palestine, so that they have the right to live in dignity. I can do that while I'm wearing my hijab and wearing my Palestinian traditional garments. I urge you to adopt the resolution and to add anti-Palestinian to the resolution. And I urge you to call for a permanent ceasefire. Hate has no place here. Thank you.
Thank you for your remarks. Thank you to everyone for sharing your testimony. I will hear from Pat Martin, and I also just wanted to note, while we're waiting for Martin to come up, if you have any suggested edits, I heard some, you can deliver them to City Clerk Sarah Taylor Farrell.
Good evening,
Welcome.
Mayor and council members. My name is Pat Martin. I'm a King Farm resident, a farmstead gardener, and an avid supporter of the farmstead. I'm happy to be before you tonight, again, to provide a perspective on the use of the farmstead. In 1997, 26 years ago, the King family of farmers gave the property to the city. The covenant prescribed that the site be used as a neighborhood park and required the city to construct recreational facilities for the future King Farm residents and the public. Today, the farmstead is designated a park, recreation area, and historic property. Over the 26 years, the city has commissioned many studies on the potential usage of the farmstead. The latest study, the PES study in March of 22, was to determine income-related generating uses without regard to the designated restrictions. That is, consider it not a park nor a recreational facility. Given that latitude, the study identified about 18 uses for the farmstead, including a storage facility, restaurant, brewery, and commercial kitchen. The study concluded that no user would cover the farmstead enhancement cost, and most would not contribute to sustaining the property. That means the farmstead, even with users, will need annual funding. Before that, it will need funding to improve the buildings. So what's required? First, recognize that you are, in fact, the developer. You can define the building use, recognizing that 26-year-old promise to keep it a park and recreation facility. Next steps: identify the tenants, their infrastructure needs, and the funding. In concert with the King Farm family wishes, the buildings should house recreation facilities. You may be aware that the city's ballet company is in need of a practice and storage facility. Viz Arts could be a tenant. Yoga and dance studios are options. An indoor pickleball facility would serve the increasing popularity of this sport. Once tenants are identified, consider dedicating the revenues generated from the Farm View development to improvements and to sustain the property. You are the new stewards of this historic representation of 19th century farming in Maryland. This treasure's in your backyard. Preserve it, protect it for future Rockville citizens. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Tariq Andela. Sarah Shakir.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, council members. My name is Sarah Shakir, and I am an MCPS teacher. I fully support the resolution rejecting anti-Semitism, anti-Arabism, and anti-Islamophobia. But I urge you to carefully please consider the definitions of hate speech that you adopt, so as not to stunt the First Amendment rights of community members. I am also here today because a little over a month ago, on November 5th, I attended the Interfaith Gaza ceasefire rally in Rockville, at which we were also demanding the release of all hostages, civilian hostages. I'm sure that you, along with the 3 million viewers of the viral video from that day, watched counter-protesters yell hateful racial slurs and threats of mass violence at the peaceful protesters. Specifically, we were called barbarians, murderers, and terrorists. We were threatened with death by having our heads cut off and told that we would not be allowed to live. This included the elderly and children as young as 5 years old who were also present. It was menacing and deeply disturbing, to say the least. But I would argue that equally as disturbing was the deafening silence of Rockville city officials. There was no public condemnation of the hate speech and threat of violence that was directed at us that day. And I can't help but wonder if that day the tables had been turned, if Palestine supporters had hurled anti-Semitic insults and death threats to supporters of Israel, if things would have looked different. Your constituents from Muslim and Palestinian and Arab backgrounds are not less important than those of Jewish or Israeli backgrounds. So just as you had shown support for your Jewish and Israeli residents by illuminating City Hall in blue and white, I request that you be equitable in making your Palestinian, Arab, and Muslim families feel supported, in this instance by calling for an immediate and permanent ceasefire instead of remaining silent on the killing of thousands of innocent civilians in Gaza. I echo the words of Mayor Newton from October 23rd. We cannot afford to be numb or helpless, but must see the humanity of ourselves and others. Thank you.
Thank you. We welcome David Schneier. And the next speaker is Alan Frankel.
I didn't know that I was actually signing up to speak, but I'm a rabbi in the community, and I've been following as best I can, some of what's been happening here, and also the attack on members of the community who have spoken here a month or so ago. And I personally want to apologize for what happened. I'm someone who's very familiar with human rights issues, not only as they affect the Jewish people, but also as they affect the Palestinian people. I've spent a fair amount of time, in the West Bank. I also have friends who are in Gaza, and so I very much represent a part of the Jewish community, a growing part of the Jewish community that is struggling. As I think many Palestinians are struggling, because the extreme violence that we're seeing before our eyes is taking place from both camps. There are there's hatred on both sides, and the extreme representation of that from the Jewish community and also from the Palestinian community. And I think, I don't know if it's in your power, but to condemn, any acts of violence and hatred coming from both sides. So I, once again, thank you for the opportunity to speak. I didn't know I was signing up to speak, but thank you very much, and I think you're doing a great job. And those candles, I was counting the number of council people there are. Each candle is represented here, so thank you.
Thank you very much, Rabbi. Alan Frankel?
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council. My name is Alan Frankel. I live in Falls Mead, and I'm a proud resident of the city of Rockville. I'm here tonight to talk about the Rockshire Center, which used to house a Giant and a bunch of other small retail. In about a half an hour or so, you're going to be hearing from the people who want to develop that land. And they're going to tell you that this is the greatest thing that has ever come to Rockville. They're going to tell you it's the best thing that's ever happened to the community of Rockshire, and that this is something that has to be built and has to be built in the manner in which they are proposing. I've been involved with the Rockshire Giant plot ever since the first people came and gave their opinion as to what should be on that site. Originally, the community really wanted a return to retail, and over time it became pretty apparent that retail was not coming back there. Giant wasn't coming back, and that there was going to be some type of community development. They're going to tell you that their plan of 60 houses, about 29 townhouses and 31 single-family houses, is perfect for that lot. But if you look at the plat and you look at their drawings, you can see that it is still too dense for that small piece of property. It's better than the 116 units that somebody else wanted to build there, but it's still not perfect. In addition to its density, that plot of land also houses parking for the Rockshire Pool and the Rockshire community. And there is a deed on record that says that Rockshire is entitled to so many spaces. The problem is that nobody knows how many spaces that's supposed to be. And there has been a proposal to move those spaces, not along the side of Rockshire, but on the other side of the community. So what I'm asking you to do is to be skeptical, but be open-minded to what the community wants. And what the community wants is a fair development that is in keeping with the surrounding developments, which are basic colonial type of townhouses, and to provide sufficient parking for the Rockshire people and for the Korean Christian church that was originally built as a synagogue, and one of the reasons that this council allowed that to go through without sufficient parking is because Giant was there. There's a little bit of retail, and for that we are grateful. Thank you so much for your time this evening.
Thank you. Next we have Asim Qureshi and Savannah Sejor. I think Savannah has already spoken. Mr. Carter, Asim Qureshi and Carter, last name Carter. Are you here? Okay. There's a name, Jason Serena, is that right? These are handwritten. I wonder if people were thinking they were signing in. Is there anyone from the floor who would like to speak who hasn't? Please. And then I have Ed Feinberg and Beryl Feinberg. Would you like to speak after? Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. Welcome.
Good evening. Assalamu alaikum. Peace be with you. Thank you for this opportunity. This is my first time at Rockville. Thank you. I'm from Gaithersburg, just across the street. And when I was a child, I was 12 years old. I was driven out with my family and the entire village by the Israeli forces. And we walked barefooted, whatever we had on at midnight that night for weeks without food or water. And then when we were told to come back, and they lined up the people, which is your home, we just thought we're going to go and, you know, one by one. And they start bulldozing and putting dynamite, and they bombed the whole entire village, plus 2 other villages nearby my village. It's about 10,000 population. That was in 1967. And then we settled in a nearby village. We were like about 65 people in one room with nothing else, just walls. It was 24 hours curfew, and we were forced out again after 7 weeks under the occupation. We were not allowed to go back to village, get any change of clothes. My father was the mayor, and he was also negotiating every day to see if we can get some change of clothes or food for the families, and the answer was always no. Then we became refugees to our new home in the desert somewhere in Jordan to live with the scorpions and the snakes. Then after that, I was fortunate that I had family in the United States, that we came here and we lived here. During the first Gulf War, my family paid the price for it. We have the longest hate crime in Montgomery County during the whole entire, because we share the same name with the Hussein, it's not even our last name. It was shortened because it was too many Muhammads in the family. Muhammad. Then we settled for just the grandfather name. And so it was like 10 years before we even built the case to go to the court. And after the court, he was dismissed because they forgot to do the intake. So he was free, and we still have a pending case. You started this resolution. I think this is great because we've seen a lot of inflammatory statements from officials. It's very sad. We vote for officials to be there to represent all of us, not take sides. I don't want to see my family go through this. I mean, we are watching what's going on with our families. I have lost families in Gaza. I have families in the West Bank. I have families in 1948 occupied Palestine. Every family is paying the price over there too. So I thank you very much for what you have done. This is a great move, and I would like to reiterate what was said for me. Please amend to add anti-Palestinian, because the attacks is really more Palestinian, none that just Arabs. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Welcome, Mr. Feinberg.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of the Rockville City Council. I'm here to encourage that the Mayor and Council of Rockville not to pass a resolution specifically condemning the events at Senator Cardin's office in early November. In the aftermath of the October 7th invasion of the State of Israel by Hamas, there has been a soaring increase in anti-Israeli, anti-Semitic, anti-Palestinian, and anti-Arab sentiments in this country and around the world. Some of the statements made at protests, marches, and manifestos have been highly inappropriate. While Americans have the right to engage in free speech, there should never be wholesale condemnation of groups of people simply because they are citizens of a particular country or members of a particular ethnic or religious group. The words used by some protesters against Palestinians in November at Senator Cardin's office are reprehensible. But equally reprehensible, and often lost in discussion, are the attacks on American Jews that are occurring with alarming frequency in the Montgomery County Public Schools, in Rockville neighborhoods, and throughout the state and country. The Anti-Defamation League reports that anti-Semitic incidents have increased in this country by 400% since October 7th. In considering how to approach this issue, there first must be the absolute recognition that Hamas wantonly and aggressively attacked the State of Israel. More than 1,200 innocent people were killed or kidnapped that day. Hamas acted on its pledge to extinguish the existence of Israel, and they continue to be committed to murdering all Jews in Israel and around the world. In the aftermath of the October 7th massacre, Israel has engaged in actions to defend itself from outside terror. I acknowledge that in its quest to contain terror, innocent people have been killed. The deaths of innocent Palestinians and innocent Israelis has been a source of pain and grief. Over time, the mayors and councils of Rockville have examined difficult issues and advocated for rational resolution of divisive conflicts. I ask you to apply that sense of fairness in this situation. Let Rockville lead by example. Do not pass any resolution that vilifies Israelis or Palestinians who condemn Hamas and seek to end this tragic conflict. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Welcome and good evening, and I promise to be brief. I know you want to keep your meeting short. I'm here this evening to clarify actions that were taken by the last mayor and council concerning a resolution condemning anti-Semitism. On May 1st, 2023, the mayor and council unanimously approved a resolution that had been carefully considered and had input and edits from all members of the mayor and council. I moved the resolution's approval, and former council member and current Mayor Ashton seconded it. All members of the mayor and council, including former and current council member Dr. David Miles, supported the resolution. Unfortunately, there was a bit of a procedural snafu. Although there was indeed consensus on the resolution, there was a procedural oversight. The resolution was not formally adopted through a recorded vote. None of us realized this error at the time. Mayor Newton told the mayor of Chevy Chase in June that we had unanimously adopted this resolution. All of us were proud of that action. I encourage this mayor and council to formally adopt, through proper procedures, the original resolution that was agreed upon last May. Councilmember Valeri, I thank you for working on the resolutions that are before you this evening. Thank you very much for your efforts. I know the time and energy it takes to work through something like this. I am proud of this resolution that rejects anti-Arabism, anti-Semitism, and Islamophobia in Rockville. I endorse the references to resolutions 10-21 and 12-21 and ask that you similarly and equally approve the original correct May 1st resolution condemning anti-Semitism and then equally incorporated as the two other resolutions into the resolution before you this evening. I also caution you, as the Human Rights Commission advised only a month or so ago, do not take political positions. This resolution should be above that. It is more of a global context against different biases. Adding references to a ceasefire or Palestinian genocide is clearly a political statement. We did not take positions on the war in Ukraine. We have not taken positions on many other. Let us keep it above that, and I ask you to deeply consider that. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Is Scott Weber in the room? Welcome.
Madam Mayor and members of the City Council, I thank you for the opportunity to let a neighbor come in. I happen to live in the far-off distant land of Bethesda. However, I am a citizen of this globe, and I'm here both as, for those who know me, as a human rights and a civil rights activist. My undergraduate degree is actually in conflict management. It was focused quite a bit on Middle Eastern conflict, specifically protracted social conflict, appropriate to what's going on in the Middle East, but throughout the world. I have made comments available to you in written form. I won't repeat them. Some of them are more stylistic, but the one most important one I wish to add, to bring to your attention to all those here, is in a separate whereas that states the Rockville Mayor and Council welcome and celebrate broad diversity of thought, opinion, and the public expression of these beliefs when conducted in respectful exchanges and civil dialogue. I think that is key. The fact that you have cities here that can brag about their diversity, brag about their differences of opinion, that needs to be celebrated and honored in action, in addition to merely celebrating as a statistic. There are lots of different opinions in what is going on here. In acknowledgement of an earlier speaker who was an international lawyer, there are words out here that are triggering, but there are also contexts that are done on a global scale. You will hear about genocide. You're going to hear about ethnic cleansing. You hear about what is a war crime, what is hate speech. I implore all of you, both here at the DS and all those who are here, to actually start reading. What does the United Nations say that is the definition of genocide, as opposed to what is a war crime versus what is ethnic cleansing? What is a crime against humanity? As people are throwing off who is killing whom, what is a slaughter, these are triggering, but they also have context within international forums of real definitions. And so when the words are used, when someone wants to be free versus the opposite is being oppressed. But to punish someone for wanting other people to be free is something we need to look at and put into the context of the conversation, but let's talk about it in civil discourse. What does it mean? How does it mean? We had an unfortunate circumstance where we had a county council member reacting to another group's position of free speech. He came off with a position that says unequivocally condemning an act of Jew hate. But what he ended up doing was imputing the intent of others. That was not what they said, not what they meant, but that didn't matter. That cascaded on to the fact that we then had sitting legislators, the senators of Montgomery County, which then went to all the Jewish members of the General Assembly, all imputing intent upon people who didn't actually say what it is they were saying, but they're saying that's what they meant because that's what it means to them. So I just ask you to please consider what it is that you believe, have a civil dialogue, do something simple like ask, what do you mean by that? It makes a big difference, and let's have a conversation that can bring peace, more peaceful resolution to something that is not going to be resolved for a very long time, but let's manage it so that we, within the city boundaries of Rockville, all of Maryland, can live with our neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That concludes the list of signups of people who signed up in person. Is there anyone else who has not been able to speak that would like to? And then we'll go to virtual. Commissioner, and then, thank you.
Hello, my name is Gabrielle Zui. In regards to the resolution on rejecting anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, and anti-Arab bias in the city of Rockville, I would like to share this information from the U.S. Department of Justice website. At the federal level, hate crime laws include crimes committed on the basis of the victim's perceived or actual race, color, religion, national origin, sexual orientation, gender identity, or disability. Also, national origin-based bias is discrimination based on a person's actual or perceived country or region of origin, ethnicity, or accent. I encourage you to consider this information in any resolution which responds to hate crime and hate speech, noting national origin in addition to religion and race. As a member of the Montgomery County Committee Against Hate Violence, though not representing that group in any official capacity tonight, I would like to make another suggestion. The MoCo CAHV has begun to use anti-Jewish instead of anti-Semitism due to input from local Jewish community leaders, as well as anti-Muslim instead of Islamophobia. As an example, using this language would change the name of the aforementioned resolution to, quote, on rejecting anti-Jewish, anti-Muslim, and anti-Arab bias in the city of Rockville. I'm personally not super informed about the change from anti-Semitism to anti-Jewish that has been seen in different things throughout the county, but I'm just sharing that information that we've gathered from local Jewish community leaders. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hello, thank you. My name is Tariq Ode. I wasn't planning on speaking today, but I just wanted to just speak briefly. I know the gentleman that spoke earlier that talked about anti-Semitism is up 400%. You know, I want to tell you, so I'm a Palestinian American. I was born in Palestine, so I had a chance to firsthand experience the racism, the bigotry, the apartheid by the state of Israel before coming here to the States, of course. So I think it's important, you know, first for me to live as part of the community here in Montgomery County, is I could honestly speak and say we love our Jewish brothers and sisters. So this has nothing to do with anti-Semitism. I think the concern that I have is anti-Semite or anti-Semitism is thrown around loosely. It's become the boy who cried wolf, as opposed to using it when it's absolutely necessary. You know, what I think the gentleman didn't share with you is a lot of those complaints with anti-Semite includes people asking for a ceasefire, people who are saying stop the genocide, stop the ethnic cleansing of children in Gaza and Palestine. All those are referred to as anti-Semite, which is absolutely just thrown out there. So just want to throw for the record, over 20,000 civilians have been slaughtered over the past 73 days. So over 10,000 children have been slaughtered, have been bombed. What's concerning is over 50% of those children are under the age 6. So this has never been, somebody mentioned Hamas, this has never been a war about Hamas. This is a war against collective punishment. This is a war against civilians. So what is it? I think according to the UN, over 90% of all residential buildings and housing have been bombed by Israel. Indiscriminate bombing. Even President Biden talked about that. So I think there's a concern when you look at things holistically and try and understand the whole entire picture of what's going on. So when you have 90% plus of all civilians are displaced, we're entering the winter. They're sleeping in temperatures equivalent to about 35, 40 degrees at nighttime in a vinyl tents. So this is the dilemma that we're all living in. So I mean, I would caution anyone starting to use the word anti-Semite, because as Arabs, we're Semite too. So I know the young lady talked about saying anti-Jewish or anti-Islam, but at the same time, please consider what our students are going through in Montgomery County, having families who have been killed. So I personally have 3 friends in Montgomery County, total lost 60 family members. Others have no way of knowing for the last 2-3 weeks, don't even know if their families are still alive or dead. So that's the situation we're in. But I really appreciate you taking the time. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the room who would like to speak? Thank you. Madam Clerk, Sarah Tara Farrell. Oh, perfect.
Can I speak just one sentence?
Let me go to, we have some folks who are waiting on virtual. Let me see, go to those who've signed up first, okay? Give me 1 second. Heather Moran. Ms. Taylor Farrell, is it possible to check to see if they're online? And I'll go through the rest of the list just in case.
Mayor, she is not on the line.
Thank you. Reverend Ann Durst.
Yes, good evening. Can you hear me?
Good evening. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity to address you tonight. I'm the Reverend Ann Dursey. I'm a deacon and the Minister of Community Engagement at St. John's Norwood Episcopal Church in Bethesda, Chevy Chase, Maryland. And I'd like to speak tonight in support of the resolution that you're considering to speak out against hate speech in Montgomery County. And I just have 2 points to make. The first is that in Montgomery County, any hate crime, anything that rises to the level of a hate crime, of course, should be pursued by the judicial system, and those who are perpetrating hate crimes should be held accountable. But I would also like to say, secondly, that in Montgomery County, the law exists in a context of norms and standards of behavior that we strive as a county that celebrates and supports diversity. And that context insists that our public speech be within the bounds of civility, peacefulness, respect for the dignity of all people, as many have said here tonight. And I believe that the incident that occurred on November 5th far exceeded in any possible way what we should consider and tolerate as the kind of speech that we want to entertain publicly. We support freedom of speech. We support diversity of opinion. In fact, it's essential for our county to engage in diversity of opinion, discussion of ideas, but it must be done in the context of respect for the dignity of every person and respect for the standards that we strive as citizens of this county to maintain. So thank you very much for the opportunity to make these points. And I applaud Rockville for taking a public position on a very difficult subject. But I don't think it is difficult to say that as we express differences of opinion, even on these sensitive issues, that we want to do it civilly, peacefully, and respectfully. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next, we'll hear from Walter Ruby and Fatima Argan.
Great. Well, thanks so much for having us. Fatima and I represent a group called Jamaat, which is Jews and Muslims and allies acting together. And what we try to do is strengthen relations between our two communities, and specifically, in many ways, but specifically standing up for each other when either community is under attack or other communities. So, and even if the attack comes from someone within our own community. And
We've lost audio.
Madam Mayor and Council, I don't control the facility of the online version, only what's happening in here. So my staff is in back and IT are controlling the WebEx, okay? I can't even see what's going on right now.
Mr. Ruby has to unmute himself. We don't have control over that.
Mr. Ruby, can you please unmute yourself? Okay, I'm going to ask if staff can get in touch with Walter Ruby, and is Fatima Argan available?
He dropped offline apparently.
Thank you.
So, are you able to hear me?
We can hear you now.
Okay, awesome, great.
It's
My name
very
is
low.
Fatima
I'm
Argan.
sorry to interrupt. If you could just speak as loud as you can. We cannot hear you. I'm going to ask if staff can just check on the folks, and if they would prefer to do a written or email us, we will be happy to entertain any additional testimony. I just want to say thank you to everyone who has come to be here to share your testimony, your stories. I know this is not easy to do, and we appreciate each and every one of you for being here. All are welcome here, and we neglect all forms of hate. I will be discussing the resolution later on this evening after consent, and I just want to say thank you to all of you. Again, I know this is a very difficult topic and it's very emotional. I also know that it's been hard for people who are dealing with neighbors and may have differences of opinion, but we can unanimously say that Rockville should be a safe place for all, and that's what we'll work to create. All right, thank you. Again, I'll close out the community forum component unless I'm just looking to staff to see if any audio has been reestablished.
Yes, apparently they're having difficulties on the IT side.
Okay, thank you. All right. We're going to move on to consent agenda, and then we will take a quick 5-minute break if that's okay with my colleagues. Okay, thank you. All right, so we have 2 consent agenda items. Consent agenda item A, that relates to the award of vehicle leasing contract to Enterprise Fleet Management pursuant to terms of Sourcewell Contract 030122 EFM, Vehicle Leasing of Fleets, through April 18, 2026, not to exceed $4.5 million, and authorizing our city manager to execute the related ancillary master equity leasing. We also have before us the approval of 2 Freightliner 1085 HD duty dump trucks and 1 Freightliner 11
Madam
Ford
Mayor,
SD.
we only have A and B, the minutes, the first consent A and B minutes.
Yes, perfect, thank you. So we'll pull off B. I'll remove that from here. Thank you. And item C, approval of minutes. I know that we've discussed maybe pulling one of these items. I just want to see how you all feeling. Can we move forward with the approval of minutes? At least to start. Okay, do you all agree to pull A for discussion? Thank you. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you. Any second? All right, it's been a motion made and seconded. Councilmember Van Grack as well as Councilmember Fulton. All those in favor? Thank you. It's unanimous. Next, the award of vehicle leasing contract to Enterprise Fleet Management. I'll open the floor for discussion. Councilmember Valeri.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And it just completely came out of my brain. In talking about the vehicle leasing for fleet vehicles, I'm curious because it wasn't clear to me from our agenda packet if we were looking at hybrids in addition to solely electric vehicles, because I know cost-wise it's become comparable or more comparable. So I would be interested personally in that and what percentage of the vehicle leasing, what is our goal, and then realistically what could we do. So I was curious about that, and I didn't necessarily see that as part of our discussion.
Welcome, Mr. Woods. Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council. Councilmember Valeri, I will seek to answer your question. Yes, we do consider hybrid vehicles. Part of the resolution that was passed with the Climate Action Plan does not specify that vehicles need to be fully electric. We actually have at least one vehicle that is a plug-in hybrid electric right now that's in the lease program. And when we evaluate the suitability of vehicles, we're considering any type of alternative fuel vehicle that best suits the city's needs. So we are considering a variety of different options. And to answer your question on the goal of the total number of vehicles within the leased program that right now have suitable options for electrification, I think we calculated it's about 37%. So there's almost 200 vehicles that will be in the leased program, several of which are police vehicles or vehicles that are involved in snow and ice operations. They require 24-hour duty cycles, and therefore they can't go down for an extended period of charging. So those vehicles right now we're not considering as part of the electrification of our fleet. However, all other sedans, SUVs, light-duty pickup trucks, when they come due for replacement, they're either entering the lease program for the first time as an electric vehicle, or we have several vehicles that we acquired before the Climate Action Plan was adopted. They will be leased for the second time as an electric vehicle.
Thank you. I was thinking of the fully electric. I was thinking of the hybrids in those circumstances where you said if you, sorry, I'm short, where you can't be down, as it were, right, and you can't wait for like a full charge. That looking at hybrids for those vehicle needs,
sure,
in particular, would be would get us closer to that goal under the Climate Action Plan.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you. The resolution that's being referenced, just for the public's knowledge, is resolution number 2-22, transition the city on-road fleet to cleaner and more efficient fuel sources to reduce petroleum fuel consumption and greenhouse gas emissions. I want to thank staff. I sent a number of questions ahead of time, and the gist I'd like to make sure that we understand is that we know what the plan is for trying to transition fleet in the manner that we have agreed in the resolution, as well as to be able to document the reduction in petroleum usage over time. In the brief book, it notes that about 12% of the vehicles are earlier slated for AV or some other type of more renewable, more energy efficient vehicle. So I'd like to understand if we can accelerate not just 12%, but have a higher number than that, given you said the 37% eligible. I know that there's some vehicles that are waiting for their lease time to come up. And then the second question is, can we have a report on an annual basis to the Mayor and Council, as well as the Environment Commission, on where we stand on that transition?
Sure. So first question, yes, the 12% referenced in your brief book, that was really intending to be the number of electric vehicles leased once we have fully leased our vehicles, but not necessarily have gone to full electrification, because we have leased several vehicles prior to the adoption of the Climate Action Plan. So as those leased vehicles come due for their second generation of a lease, they will be entered into, they will continue in the lease program, but we will consider EV models at that point. So we do have a plan. Every single SUV, sedan, and light-duty pickup truck come due for replacement. We are adhering to the resolution and acquiring an EV model. Remind me to say, annual report. So yes, we plan to report on this specific metric through our annual Climate Action Plan report. This is one of the action items of the Climate Action Plan, both in petroleum reduction and in the electrification of our fleet. So we plan on bringing forward that report annually as part of our overall Climate Action Plan update.
Please plan to highlight that, just so that it's front and center, given the particular resolution on this matter. That would be greatly appreciated.
Sure, absolutely.
Thank you. All right, I'll entertain a motion to approve this consent agenda item, unless anyone has questions.
No, I was just noting that I'd move forward with this consent agenda. Didn't have a question.
I will second.
Wonderful. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. All right. So, Mayor, we are slightly behind schedule, but we really appreciate taking the time to hear everyone's stories. We're going to take a 5-minute break, and then we're going to come back and address the rest of our items here. We have before us the resolution for approval and also the Rockshire presentation. So I'm just going to call 5-minute break starting now. Thank you, everyone. Welcome back. It is still December 18th, meeting number 3523. We'll now be moving to our next agenda item, where we'll be discussing a resolution. Agenda item number 11, resolution rejecting anti-Arabism, anti-Semitism, and Islamophobia in the city of Rockville. I will note to my colleagues, thank you to Councilmember Valeri for taking the first draft as well as taking feedback of the rest of the council. And she sent out a revised version. It's online as well, but I did have it printed out for all of us. So I'm going to open the floor to see if anyone has any comments or suggestions. Councilmember Valeri.
Can everybody hear me? Okay. I thought that I would kind of start things off, and it's interesting because I had many things in my head today as I was going through and editing and working with my colleagues. And the one thing that I kept coming back to, and try not to cry, even though everyone's like made it very hard on me this evening, is the story of my great grandmother. And she lived in Smyrna, Turkey in 1912. And she barely survived the Great Fire of Smyrna. And I place her struggle and how she was made to feel. And I place it, in my heart at all times. But Smyrna was a beautiful city back then. It was a place with a large Jewish population, a large Greek Orthodox population, a large Muslim population, Armenian. There were even expat Brits and Americans. And the Smyrna of then, I think, is something that we all have the capacity to hold in our hearts too. And that's how I see the city of Rockville. We should be that beautiful place all together, standing together against hate. So, I'm not going to cry. But that's in my heart right now. And I want to put forward, based on the compelling stories that we heard, a really succinct and great point that we should add in anti-Palestinian and anti-Israeli to the beginning lines of this, and I think into the name of the resolution, and then in the parts where we reference the name of the resolution within it, and then to the point that we'll get to later, we should put in the reference to the anti-Semitism resolution in the preamble as well. But I think that the feedback that we heard, especially tonight, would warrant adding those in as well.
Thank you, Councilmember. So just to take the first piece, and then I'm going to open it up for, I see Councilmember Van Grack has his hand up. That would be adding anti-Palestinian, anti-Israeli. I'm just noting each paragraph by numbers.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be paragraph, in the title, paragraph 2, 4,
and then at the very bottom.
And number 8.
Yeah.
2, 4, and 8, as well as title. Does everyone support that? Can I get a straw? Hands up. Thumbs up. Perfect. Okay. And then you had a second.
Oh, it was the addition of the relevant, I don't know what the number is, of the resolution that was passed.
Oh, yes. Thank you. Okay.
In the beginning.
I know Councilman Van Grack has something to say about that too. I will note that I conferred with our city attorney during the break. Just so by way of background, the city of Rockville did go through discussions over 2 meetings and a number of other meetings about the anti-Semitism resolution in May and June. As you may have heard, there was a technicality there, and so there is a desire of this mayor and council to make that official. That statement was shared with a joint resolution and statement by 12 to 14 other municipalities, and City of Rockville was included in that. So we will discuss under old new business. That's the place where we will be able to get that done, formally approving that as it was shared with the municipalities who also signed on. But I will request, if people are open to it, making sure we acknowledge in line or paragraph 1 that resolution as well. So I just want to say, do we have a thumbs up for that? Thank you. Okay, those are two changes. Councilmember Van Grack.
Thank you. I just want to add that this resolution is critical for the city of Rockville and the surrounding areas, not just for the personal stories that we've witnessed and many of us have experienced, but also through the data. I went through the Montgomery County hate crimes data over this past week. And if you look at it and see what's happened since the beginning of October to now, and previous to the beginning of October, the previous months, it's astounding. And it's true, we heard from the commissioner that they use the term a little differently than we're using it here, but if you look at the crimes, hate crimes that were reported and investigated against the anti-Arab and anti-Islam, it's increased 4 times in Montgomery County since the beginning of October. If we look at the crimes reported against the anti-Jewish, their term, it has increased almost 3 times as much. In fact, over the past month, and we're talking about November of this past year, over 1/2 of all hate crimes in Montgomery County were to the Jewish community, the Arab community, and the Islam community. That's absolutely unacceptable, and it's up to this council to reject that and condemn it throughout this city, which is part of Montgomery County. I want to add what Councilmember Valeri spoke about, because I know, to me, much like to her, this is very personal. I'm a member of the Jewish community. And I remember years ago living in Rockville and being told specifically, get out of Rockville, you dirty Jew. And that type of disgusting language has happened in recent times to the Arab community, the Islam community, the Israeli community, the Palestinian community, and the Jewish community. And it's unacceptable. Everyone in Rockville deserves to be part of Rockville. Everyone in Rockville deserves to feel that they are part of Rockville, regardless of their race, background, religion, culture, or creed. And this resolution that this body is stepping forward to do so is the right move, and it's the strong move. I support what Councilmember Valeri talked about, including, based on the testimony previously, of also rejecting anti-Palestinian and anti-Israeli actions, because they, like the other actions, are important for us to condemn. And I also think it's important to talk about the history of what this body in previous terms have done, both with what was referenced here and what was done earlier this year by the mayor and council with regard to a resolution that the town of Chevy Chase was putting forward through Montgomery County, seeing a rise in hate crimes. Now, the rise that they were seeing earlier this year is not even to the degree that we have seen in the past 2 months, and why it's all more important now for us to make this stand and pass forward this resolution. I support the changes that Councilmember Valerian, the mayor, talked about, and I look forward to hopefully having this resolution passed.
Thank you, Councilmember. Any other comments by my colleagues? Councilmember Miles.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Again, I want to thank all those who've testified tonight and previous nights. Thank our predecessors for the work that they've done on this, including staff, Mr. Davis. I want to thank my colleagues. Thank you, Councilmember Valeri, for all your work on this, the emails, and working with my colleagues on this. Again, I'm not a member of either the Jewish nor the Palestinian community, but I am human, and I don't like when humans do bad stuff to other humans, period. And I think this gets at that in a way. So I do recognize, as former colleague said, these are just words, but words do matter. It's part of a process, and I'm glad that we can be part of moving this forward. I think certainly there are other things that were mentioned tonight, other things that I would like to add to it. I think this is a good start, and look forward to moving forward and making not only this proclamation better, but as a body continue to speak up for all the marginalized throughout. So thank you all.
Thank you, Dr. Miles. Councilmember Jackson.
So I'm not going to be as eloquent as Adam or Councilmember Van Grack or other people. But first, let me say thank you to Councilmember Valeri for this resolution. I know you put a lot of hard work into it. And Van Grack, thank you for making it better. And thank you all for your testimony tonight. Regardless of not which side, but how you feel and what your experience is. You talked about it, and we heard you. And I really appreciate it because it was really moving testimony. You know, regardless of where we stand on the issue, we're all Rockvillians, and that's the beauty of Rockville, is all this diversity and inclusion, and the fact that we can come together, we can talk, we can discuss it, and we can actually, as a council, have an opinion that says that we're not going to let hate dictate who we are. And I think that's really important. So thank you, Council Member Valeri, for this resolution. I wholeheartedly support it.
Thank you to everyone for your comments. Is anyone, sorry, correcting some IT issues. But I just wanted to thank my colleagues for coming together on this resolution, thank my previous colleagues for the work that we've done on anti-hate. Everyone in this room is welcome. Everyone who's listening is welcome. That's why I love Rockville, is that we can talk about tough subjects. We can respect each other, and we can stand up for each other when we see bad things happening. I'm very proud of all of you for sharing your stories and your opinions, and for us doing it civilly and respectfully. You can't underestimate that. And when we look around what's going on in the world, we look around what's going on in our country, this is an example of how it should be done. This council is against hate, and we welcome everyone. We respect everyone, regardless of religion, race, different kinds of disabilities, LGBTQ communities. We say we are diverse, but it matters how inclusive we are in times like this. And so we'll be taking a motion to pass this resolution, but I just want to say thank you. Hopefully the rest of the world can learn and listen. Councilmember Fulton.
But just before a motion, I want to make sure I understand. There were several other edits to the draft than what was in the agenda. And I want to make sure, like, the people listening understand all of the changes before we make a motion.
That's right. And I also just wanted to note one other thing is we heard from some members of the community about the importance of adding anti-Jewish. Is that supported? Do you feel like it's already covered? I just want to open that discussion.
I can say whether it's anti-Semitic or anti-Jewish, I feel it's, as drafted, since that's the way it has been drafted for a while, I'm fine with that. I don't have a preference either way. I don't know if anybody else in the body does.
Yeah, I was actually, you preempted me, Madam Mayor. I was actually going to ask that question too, because again, not coming from the Jewish faith, I think it was a great example of interfaith collaboration between me and Councilmember Van Grack, and we will lead by example. But if we could change it to anti-Jewish, then I think it could be, even stronger. And on your point on the terms that Montgomery County uses, I think that would align as well. And recognizing too that a lot of that data is unfortunately so underreported from all communities as regards to that. But yeah, I think that would make sense.
Councilmember Van Grack.
I would just note, what we've had in the public has included these terms that we have here, and we didn't hear any negative feedback other than Montgomery County does use those other terms. So I would probably prefer keeping the language that we have in the current draft as opposed to changing it, just to the extent there is someone who feels that those other terms don't represent how they feel about the resolution.
Yeah, and I think we did, sorry, Madam Go ahead. I think we did hear from one gentleman who said that he identifies as Semitic as well. So I'm trying to find that line of what it most accurately captures the hate that is out there. And it was two other gentlemen actually. I think it was another person too that spoke up to that. And I just want this to be as relevant both now and into the future. as it possibly can be.
Okay, do I hear support or commentary? I just want to go through my other colleagues there. Dr. Miles, what say you?
I'm fine with the changes as
Okay.
articulated.
I'm good. I just want to make sure we're clear on what the actual language is that we're being
Yeah,
good
we're going to
with.
move on
Okay.
the motion, but the motion will, whoever makes the motion, because I cannot make a motion, will have to note it includes the edits as shared by my colleague, Councilmember Valeri, and then we have Group 1, which would have anti-Palestinian, anti-Israeli. I'm also hearing anti-Jewish so far, and that we'd also add the resolution reference. So those are the 3 sets of changes, so when you make the motion, you'll have to note that in your motion. Councilmember Shaw, and then Councilmember Van Grack.
Yeah, I just want to add one edit to paragraph
Which paragraph, please?
6, the 6th paragraph.
Okay.
If we could add the word community conversation in that list, sharing community conversations within that list.
Can Councilmember Shaw, can you start that one over? I couldn't hear the beginning.
So the paragraph that starts, whereas mayor and council commit to countering hate and extremism through engagement with all communities, government transparency, could we also include community conversations?
All right, so I'm hearing in addition to paragraph 6, community conversations right after governmental transparency. Just can we do a thumbs up? Are we good with that? Okay. Great, thank you, Councilmember Shaw. Councilmember Van Grack.
So, just to clarify, what are you proposing fully to be the specific forms of violence or actions that we're condemning?
Okay, I think that's fair. That since, do we have a whiteboard? I need a whiteboard here. Okay.
Can you
starting
note
with-
the paragraph, please?
Sure, I was going to start with the title, right? Councilmember Van Grack, you wanted me to go through what I'm proposing as the resolution title?
No, there's a specific question about paragraph, right?
Whether it's the paragraph or the title, we were adding before and then potentially changing the specific forms of either violence or actions that we're condemning. And I want to just understand what the terminology currently is with regard to, I believe now, 5 specific.
Correct. Okay, I can go through that. So what I have is rejecting anti-Palestinian, anti-Israeli, anti-Arabism, anti-Jewish, and I would change that to then anti-Muslim. I see what you're saying. Where do I have later on? In the city of Rockville. Thank you.
So, and again, if we're looking at the Montgomery County terms, they use anti-Jewish, anti-Arab, and anti-Islamic. Those are the terms that Montgomery County use. Again, it's not the terms that we were using and we were proposing, nor the terms that we published. I would probably feel more comfortable, because we're proposing a lot of drastic changes, with keeping what we had before and adding anti-Palestinian, anti-Israeli, just because we did publicize and we had a lot of support from the community on those terms, but anti-Palestinian and anti-Israeli as well added, which I support.
Yes, so that is what we had discussed, and we had a straw man poll on that in particular. I don't think we need to remove the other titles. There is the question, though, of anti-Jewish. I did not hear that in your remarks.
I mean, if we want to add anti-Jewish, I have no problem with that. I'd like to keep anti-Semitic just because it has its separate connotations. That would be my only addition.
I would support that. Seeing straw votes for yes. You have a comment? Okay, thank you. All right, so in summary, we'd be looking at the titles that we just mentioned as one change to paragraph, to the title, paragraphs 2, 4, and 8, that we'd add the resolution reference, which we'll talk about in old new business on anti-Semitism, because that's work we've done before. And 3 would be to include the edits as shared by Councilmember Valeri, and 4 is to insert the phrase community conversation into paragraph 6. If there are no other comments, I'd like to entertain a motion. Comment, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. On the second paragraph, was wondering if we could entertain changing anti-Arabism to just anti-Arab. I think they were just trying to keep it consistent with, we see, it says anti-Arabism, anti-Semitism.
So,
Councilmember Van Graff.
I was just going to add to what David Miles, as we were going through this, we have anti-Arabism and anti-Arabic, both within. Yeah, and I just want to clarify, the county uses the term anti-Arab.
So
I was just going to add, the county uses the term anti-Arab as opposed to Arabic or anti-Arabism.
So we will replace anti-Arabism with anti-Arab.
And then the rest would remain. So rejecting, I'm sorry.
So just to clarify, we also have inconsistency of Islamophobia and Islamophobic.
Except that Islamophobia, I think it
depends on the way
it was
it's
the verb, the grammar of it, like Islamophobia, noun versus Islamophobic, describing the kind of violence.
I understand that.
Yeah. The other thing, really quickly, to go back to Councilmember Fulton, Madam Mayor, do you want me to just go through the red lines? Because it was just a matter of making it more consistent with the formatting of previous resolutions.
I think we are okay. What I'm going to ask, because there are a lot of changes that have been made, we will entertain the motion, but I would like to designate, if you're open to it, Councilmember Valeri, to just do a clean scrub with staff that would be then circulated back to Mayor and Council, just so that we can all cross-check the edits that we have discussed.
The only question is, our next meeting isn't until January.
No, we can approve this, but we're going to do a quality check
Oh,
as long
okay,
as we
yes,
authorize
okay,
the council member
yes.
to do that.
I have no problem with that.
Yes. All right, I will entertain a motion. Councilman Van Grack.
I move to adopt the resolution with the edits that were presented to the mayor and council before the meeting, as well as the edits that were adopted by straw poll by the body. That includes the addition in the title and paragraph 4 and the final paragraph to include anti-Arab, anti-Jewish, anti-Semitism, and this is for the title, Islamophobia, anti-Palestinian, and anti-Israeli. And then when we're doing paragraphs 4 and the final paragraph, also including anti-Arab, anti-Semitism, anti-Jewish, Islamophobic, anti-Palestinian, and anti-Israeli actions. In addition, we are within the first paragraph and the first whereas, adding the resolution that was passed by the mayor and council previously this spring, and that we will be reaffirming, presumably, in old new business.
Thank you. And just to clarify, the names of the populations we're naming, in addition to the title, are in 2, 4, and 8. So I just wanted to clarify that.
2,
Paragraphs
2, 4,
and 8.
and the final paragraph, 8.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And also within paragraph 6, adding community conversation.
Yes. Is there a second, Dr. Miles?
Second, Madam Mayor.
Oh, actually, sorry. Can I introduce a friendly amendment? You need to appoint Councilman Valeri to help massage the final changes.
And as part of my motion, I will also ask that the body appoint Councilmember Valeri to smooth over the final changes and make sure that we have the complete text with staff. Is that similar?
Accept the amendment and second it as stated.
All those in favor? It is unanimous. Thank you. All right. Thank you to staff, and thank you to all of my colleagues for this. Thank you to everyone who testified today. All right. So we are slightly behind schedule, but it was important to do. I want to move on to agenda item 12A, Mayor and Council briefing on project plan PJT 2024-00017, Rockshire Village, a request to amend the Rockshire Plan development to permit construction of 60 residential units, up to 5,200 square feet of commercial and office use in a neighborhood park at 2401 Wooten Parkway in the PDRS Plan Development Rockshire Zone EYA Developments, and we'll be hearing from the applicant. I'm going to just note for the public, we have received a lot of commentary that has been included in the public record. I will note that this evening is a briefing, and we will not be taking a particular action, but it is an opportunity for us to be able to ask questions, and I will turn it over to Mr. Ortiz.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of Council. Nelson Ortiz with Community Planning and Development Services Department. Item 12A on the agenda is a briefing for Rockshire Village project plan application. The applicant and I each have a presentation for you tonight. I'll go ahead and go through my brief presentation first, then the applicant will go through his, and then at the very end, myself and the applicant along with staff online can go ahead and answer any questions you have. So the zoning ordinance lays out the method in which one may amend an existing plan development. That method is through submittal of a project plan application. One of the code requirements for a project plan application is that the applicant brief both the Planning Commission and the mayor and council. The briefings usually occur during the first half of the application review phase, and the briefings provide an opportunity for the applicant to introduce their project to the mayor and council and receive feedback. Once the application review period or phase concludes, the application moves on to the decision phase of the process and ultimately concludes with a decision by the mayor and council. In accordance with the zoning code, the mayor and council may approve a project plan application if the development proposal will not adversely affect the health or safety of persons residing or working in the neighborhood of the proposed project, be in conflict with the plan, which is our comprehensive plan, overburden existing and programmed public facilities as set forth in the zoning ordinance and as provided in the adopted adequate public facility standards, constitute a violation of any provisions of the zoning ordinance or any other applicable law, or adversely affect the natural resources or environment of the city or surrounding areas. These 5 are what we call the required findings, and staff will help the mayor and council with these findings by providing you our recommendation at the final public hearings for the application. Moving on to the project site, the subject property is located at 2401 Wooden Parkway within the Rockshire Plan Development. It is 7.32 acres in size and currently developed as a retail shopping center, although vacant for several years. The land use designation for the property is residential flexible and is zoned PDRS, Plan Development Rockshire, with an MXNC equivalent zone. The applicant has submitted this project plan application to amend a portion of the Rockshire PD in order to construct 60 dwellings up to 5,200 square feet of commercial office, a neighborhood park, and associated streets, alleys, open space, and other site improvements. The Rockshire PD was initially approved by Mayor and Council on March 7, 1966, and is currently authorized for a shopping center use. The applicant proposes to amend the Rockshire PD in order to construct 31 single-unit detached dwellings, highlighted in yellow, 29 townhouses, of which 9 will be moderately priced. Those are shown in orange. Up to 5,200 square feet of commercial office, highlighted in red, and a neighborhood park in blue. As required prior to the filing of a project plan application, the applicant initially filed a pre-application meeting application in February 2023 and held an area meeting with the community on March 1st, 2023. They then filed this project plan application in July 2023, Since the filing, staff has been reviewing the proposal and coordinating with the applicant. The applicant has held 2 post-application area meetings, the first on August 2nd, held virtually, and the second on August 23rd, held in person. The applicant then briefed the Planning Commission on September 27th and made a courtesy presentation at the request of the Planning Commission to the Transportation and Mobility Commission on October 24th. In terms of next steps, following this briefing, the applicant is encouraged to revise the proposal as needed pursuant to comments received at both the Planning Commission and Mayor and Council briefings. Staff will finalize review of the project plan application. The Planning Commission will then review the application at a public hearing and make a recommendation on the application to Mayor and Council. Once again, the applicant is encouraged to revise the project plan application as needed based on comments and the recommendation provided by the Planning Commission. The Mayor and Council will then review the application through a series of meetings, and upon hearing information and feedback from the public hearing, Mayor and Council will render a final decision on the project plan application. If approved, the applicant may proceed with the Level 2 site plan application submittal. And with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to the applicant, Mr. Jason Serino with EYA, to go over his part of the brief.
Thank you, Mr. Ortiz. Mayor and Council, congratulations. And thank you for your time tonight. I know you've had a lot of important items on the agenda tonight. We'll try to keep this brief, but we have been at this for almost 3.5 years now. And so I think part of what we want to do here tonight is give you an evolution of the plan and how we got to where we are today over the course of that time. So we'll take a little bit of time there. We'll go over some traffic items. I have some of our consultant staff here, and then we'll quickly flip through some images of what the development could look like, renderings and 3D images, and then open it up to any questions. Next slide, please. Just a little bit about EYA for those of you who haven't worked with us before. So we've been around a little over 30 years. We are a developer in the DC metropolitan region exclusively. Our projects have focused on urban infill around metro stations, and a large portion of what we do is about not just meeting but exceeding affordable housing goals of the areas we develop and of the region. We've developed over 7,000 units in this area, 10 million square feet of development. And we're a firm that, we've been involved on this project and pretty much all of ours from the very initial onset in the pursuit and acquisition phase all the way through build out of our projects. So we're a completely integrated firm with developers, land acquisition folks. We have sales, marketing, construction, and we deal with all that in-house. So you deal with us kind of from the beginning through the end. Next slide, please. It's just a map of the areas we've developed over those 30 plus years, and just kind of highlighting stuff around the area of this development. We are currently under construction on the Old King Buick site, what we call the Farmstead District, which we've worked with some of you on. We are heavily under construction on the Potomac Woods site. We plan to open for sales there in February. We recently, earlier this year, completed the project across from the Clydes off of Preserve Parkway called Tower Oaks. And then further back, we developed the Falls Grove property that had kind of similar mix of uses of what we're proposing here with small lot singles. It was a larger mixed-use development with townhomes and retail all on that site. Next slide, please. This is just a regional map of the area, and just kind of to point out a few highlights. Obviously, in the center of this map is our site. It is a residential neighborhood. The site itself is, as Mr. Ortiz explained, is part of the PDRS with the MXNC noted equivalent zone for that, meaning neighborhood commercial. In the Rockshire community, it is one of the more dense sites per the comp plan and per the zoning that exists. And part of our proposal is to bring back some of that density in the form of retail that has been sitting vacant for the last 12 years. as you look outside of this map, retail in the area is really isolated to Falls Grove, which is up to the north, the Research Row retail that's over by 270, and kind of just off the page, where if you're all familiar with Trader Joe's, over at the Travilla Shopping Center. So it's a little bit of a distance to some of those larger shopping centers, and so we're focusing on neighborhoods serving retail for this site, with those larger shopping centers just outside the mile radius area from this site. Next slide, please. So this is just the existing condition map of what's out there today. We know it's the vacant, approximately 52,000 square foot retail center that was anchored by the Giant, and then a large sea of parking. What this image doesn't tell you and show you is, the site is largely fenced off today for most of the parking. It is also open to the pool and the Rockshire Community Center for the spaces that are allocated to them under an easement agreement, and there is which is to be held in perpetuity. The spaces under that agreement are pretty well defined. There is an exhibit in that agreement that says where they are, how many there are, and then there is a terminable agreement closer to the Hurley Ave side of the project by the Korean Presbyterian Church that allocates them use of the spaces that the Rockshire Pool has when they're not using it, and then about 10 to 15 additional spaces closer to Hurley. It also doesn't show kind of how the site has been used recently, with parking being taken up by the students of Wooten High School. If you go there during the day, I've spent a lot of time out there with members of the community, with members of the police. There are broken bottles there. There are kids hanging out on the steps that go down to the Rockshire Pool that are hidden by tall evergreen vegetation, hanging out, smoking, and doing other things. Since we've been involved for 3 years, we get called and asked frequently to assist in getting the fence repaired, getting the lights repaired that are broken consistently. And we've worked a couple times to get the owners of the site, which we are not. We are a contract purchaser, to fix those, but the cost of them doing that on a site that isn't generating revenue, they're not really compelled to do that very often. And frankly, the last couple times they've made those changes and repairs to the graffiti on the walls as well, within a matter of days, it's all undone. So it's really, this proposal is about more than just what we're proposing for EYA and our development, but what's happening to the site and how we can change that site through a proposal that reaches many of the desires and things that we've heard in the community. While we may not be hitting all of them, we've gone to great extreme over these 3 years to come up with a plan that starts to hit on some of these goals and provide some things that many of the proposals before us were unwilling to or unable to provide for this site. Next slide, please. So I'll quickly walk you through this kind of 3+ year history. So in August of 2020, we came up with this plan while the comprehensive plan process was going on for the site. It was a plan that showed what could be built here under what was approved under that comprehensive plan in the style of development that we were proposing. And what that shows is 122 townhomes, a public amenity at the corner. So for those of you that aren't aware, the comprehensive plan, in the later stages of that plan, changed the recommendation to, it used to say retail and a significant public amenity. The comprehensive plan was approved to say retail and or a significant amenity. So we were showing the significant amenity in the form of a public park at the intersection of Wooten and Hurley. This plan also had 2 entrances on Hurley Avenue and then a road entrance on Wooten Parkway on the other end of the site, and providing for the 30 spaces plus or minus for the Rockshire Association. Next slide, please. And a plan like that would maximize, the goals of the city and in providing housing and pushing forward the largest amount of affordable housing on the site. So fast forward to September of 2021, the comprehensive plan process is now complete. We made our initial PAM submission. and that proposal brought the 122 townhomes down to 112. It kept the public amenity at the corner. We focused on the berm and the trees that exist on the corner there and started working to preserve some of those trees and the berming that's going on. We removed one of the entrances on Hurley Avenue, as that was a strong point of contention. And we held our public meeting, which some of the mayor and council at the time were at, members of this body were aware, and just to be frank, got significant pushback from the community. And while we thought we had staff support as we pushed this through, it led to some requests and some changes by staff as well. So next slide, please, and we'll talk about how we started to change those plans. So from September 21 to March of 2022, we spent that time doing 10 to 12 iterations of this plan, bringing them in front of the city manager at the time, in front of senior staff leaders, to come up with a plan that we felt would address what we heard in that community meeting. That plan yielded 60 units, single-family detached and townhouses, and after some back and forth where we were proposing plans that were at 49 units and all single-family detached but with no retail, we got the message that it was the desire to have retail on this site and to get some affordable units on that site, which meant getting above the 49-unit threshold to kick in the affordable housing ordinance, and then also getting enough density on the site to support the retail that needs to be subsidized by a market-driven use. And so we proposed this plan back at that time. We started working with staff. This kept a park at the corner. It put a park by the stairs to the pool with a playground where we thought it would be useful for kids who are at the pool. And it proposed the retail building at the Wooten entrance. Next slide, please. So 11 months go by, and we're working on this process with staff and refining the plan. We're working out items in relation to roads and road code waivers and things that we need to work out. And we submit our second PAM submission in February and March of 2023, still with 60 units, 31 single detached, 29 townhomes. We had increased the size of the retail at this point so that we could get between 3 to 5 retail tenants in this space. And at the suggestion of staff, we moved the park from the corner of Wooten and Hurley, and then the other smaller park near the stairs to the pool, to a more central location that was paired with the retail. We ran this by our retail consultants, and this was really a selling point for them in being able to market this in the future. There was some question around the retail, and they thought this would go a long way to bringing viability to that retail. We continue to reduce the impact on the berm and the trees that exist at the corner of Wooten and Hurley with this plan. And in the old plan, there was a bunch of houses that faced Wooten Parkway. We pulled all those off, so not only preserving the berm and the trees at the corner, but it helped preserve some of those trees and berming as you move down along Wooten Parkway. Next slide, please. So as 2023 went on, we made our project plan submission, as Mr. Ortiz said. We refined the plan in the community meeting that we held with the PAM. We had heard that there was a desire for a playground. We got the same comment from staff. We incorporated a playground into the park space at the north end of that space. And there was some commentary and questions about a retaining wall that would hold our property up above the church and the pool, as the pool is sunken below today. And we worked pretty extensively on reducing the length of that wall and the height of that wall almost by half at the time as we submitted this project plan. Next slide. We went on to hold an in-person community meeting after our virtual community meeting, and one of the big things we heard, and Councilmember Grack, there was a commitment you asked of us at that time, and we committed to bringing a pedestrian connection from Hurley down to the pool, as there is one today existing on the property. And so we worked to figure out the grading on that and how we could make it work in an accessible way up to the point of our property line, which doesn't exist today. It's not an accessible route, but it is the most convenient means of of access for the community that lives on that side of the pool. So that is now part of our submission. And at that meeting, we had discussed parking as a big issue, about adding additional parking on Hurley Avenue on our side of the road. And while that may still be a possibility, I want to note that the community wasn't really in favor of that, and staff didn't strongly support that or really support it at all for various reasons on just the operation of that road. But it was a topic we discussed at that meeting. Next slide, please. This is just a slide. So this goes through kind of what we just talked about over that multi-year period. So the plan changes are a significant reduction in units from 122 down to 60. What it doesn't, just in the unit count doesn't say what also was reduced on that plan. So the density and massing was reduced by introducing the single-family detached homes, not having all townhouse, which are 3- and 4-story product, and really isolating those townhouses to the middle end of the site and near the pool, which is brought up in the language of the comprehensive plan, where to have the taller building heights. We added the retail and a significant public park. We added the pedestrian connection from Hurley to the pool. We eliminated a second entrance onto Hurley that we were initially proposing. We preserved and continued to increase the amount of preservation of the berm and the trees along Hurley and Wooten. We reduced the retaining wall and the impacts to the neighboring properties. We modified the architecture, so that has yet to be shown. It was stuff that was discussed. It is now in our resubmission that was made just a couple weeks ago to be more traditional on the single-family homes, which face the homes across the street on Hurley. We increased the open space. We increased the public road widths to 62 feet from a lot of the projects that we've had recently show them at 56 feet. And we addressed several transportation and mobility comments. As Mr. Ortiz mentioned, we went to that commission, and we put a focus on electrification of the site, meaning there's no gas to any of these homes. They'll be all electric. The only gas will serve the retail to support restaurant and restaurant-style uses as a desirable use for this site. Electric charging around the park for scooters and bicycles, an electrical vehicle charging station in the retail parking lot. Just some of the commitments on electrification that we've been looking into. Next slide, please. There are 2 waivers that, with this plan, we'd be seeking from the mayor and council. One is a road code waiver to allow this dead-end alley shown on the screen, serving 6 townhouse units, and it would also serve the pedestrian access, kind of back-of-house pedestrian access to the retail. The loading that's shown here on the retail building has been moved so that it is accessed off of the access road on the plan left side and would no longer be sharing the alley. It's required to have a waiver because the road in the city cannot end on a dead end that does not join to a street or a cul-de-sac. And so we believe this is a necessary request to preserve the viability of the retail, to preserve the park space and open space on the job, because the solution would be to continue that alley down around the right side of the retail and connect to the public road, which would separate the retail from the park and diminish open space. Next slide, please. The second waiver is the retail parking requirement. So the spaces in yellow are the spaces dedicated to the retail building, which would meet the code requirement for retail parking spaces. Aside from if the tenants were restaurant or fast casual dining. And so the city has a requirement that the changes based on the amount of patron space in each restaurant or fast dining space, if they were to be tenanted that way, based on the number of employees that would be working there and based on the amount of outdoor dining space. So the number can vary. What we're requesting with this waiver is flexibility to allow us to tenant this with any mix of tenants under the amount of spaces that we have, which meets the baseline code, not knowing where the tenant mix is going to go until we start leasing up, but preserving that flexibility for the most desired use on the site. That standard of the 26 spaces for 5,200 square feet would meet the requirements in neighboring jurisdictions in Montgomery County if it were a full restaurant, and other jurisdictions in the area. So we're requesting that flexibility in the retail parking so that we aren't limiting the uses of that retail space. Next slide, please. This is a waiver that we will be seeking for the Planning Commission. If we get to the level 2 phase, we just want to make the mayor and council aware. We want it to be brought up as the Planning Commission will need to make a recommendation before we get to a mayor and council action on the project plan. When there is a private parking lot, which we have 2 of, the retail lot, and then the secondary lot that provides spaces for retail and the Rockshire pool, it needs to be set back from the right-of-way by 10 feet per the code. In 2 instances, we reduced that 10 feet to a little over 8 feet and around 6.5 feet in the areas dimensioned in red on this plan. Those areas would still have buffer plantings as required in the 10-foot buffer, but we're requesting that to not impose either further into the park and take up park and open space, and then also not to reduce the number of spaces in the lot for the Rockshire Pool Association and the visitor parking. Next slide. The only thing I'll highlight here, because Mr. Ortiz talked about a lot of this, is that while the zone allows up to 45 feet in height for the buildings, we would request that for the townhomes in case the option of the 4-story is taken. They'll still come in under that, but we request up to the 45 feet. The single-family homes go up to 35 feet tall, and then the retail would be 20 to 25. So just again, it's kind of while the zone allows 45, not all the uses will be going up to that height, and it speaks again to the density and massing that we talked about earlier. Next slide, please. So here is the plan that, as submitted now. We talked about a lot of the changes through the evolution, some other things that were updated recently, and some things to highlight that we haven't talked about yet. We are moving the entrance on Hurley.
Can I just,
Sure.
1 second? I just want to be mindful of time so that we can get to questions. So just note that we're hopeful to get to questions
Sure.
very soon. Thank
Okay.
you.
So the plan now has the one entrance on Hurley Avenue. It has been moved closer to the intersection of Hurley from where the existing entrance today. It does line up better by being in between houses than facing directly on one of the front doors of a unit today. We are making 3 pedestrian connections out to the Millennium Trail on our site, one which was suggested by staff in the middle of the site. We are making pedestrian connections to the Korean Presbyterian Church through our site, not just off of Hurley. We have worked, based on what we heard from the Transportation and Mobility Commission, to remove steps from the public park space that went down into the site from the northeast corner. So now that is an accessible, a third accessible entry point into the park where we had 2 prior. And we've worked to, based on staff comments, to adjust loading at the retail center, as we talked about earlier. And we talked about the electrification items. One thing I want, actually, I'll do this on the next slide. Can we go to the next slide, please, Nelson? Just focusing on the retail area, a couple things that we've done. You see the alley serving the homes there. It is blocked off with a screen fence that we will be proposing there, that we're looking to put some public art on. And you'll see the strong connection from the northeast corner of the park down to the southeast corner through the retail. That also works across the public street over to a little public space that leads to the staircase down to the pool. Next slide, please. This is just our trees per lot. Real quickly, we are meeting the trees per lot. This has been a topic in a lot of hearings, especially with the Planning Commission, where townhouses and townhouse developments don't typically meet the trees per lot total. It will be met on this job. Next slide, please. So to highlight, the purple area is proposed to be a public road, so that goes from Wooten all the way to Hurley. The orange areas would be the private roads and alleys that service the back of that service all the units and get people to their garages. And then the cyan color is the pedestrian network. You can see the 3 connections out to the Millennium Trail, the connection from Hurley to the pool, and connections through our site to the church. Next slide. So on parking, we have 2 spaces for every unit. We have the 26 spaces for the retail in yellow. We have 25 on-street visitor spaces on the public roads. We have 30 spaces in magenta that are the Rockshire Association's use during pool season and for community events at the clubhouse. and then they'd be visitor parking elsewhere. And then we have the in yellow, the 26 retail spaces. I'm going to turn it over to Katie real quick to hit some traffic points, as traffic has been a big issue. We'll flip through a handful of slides in about a minute of the renderings, and then we'll open it to questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jason. So I'm Katie Wagner with Grove Slade, and I just wanted to go over traffic study that we did for the project. So per the City of Rockville traffic study guidelines, a traffic study was technically not required for this project. Projects have to generate a certain number of trips to be required, and we reviewed the trip generation for this use compared to the previous retail use that was approved for the site, and this residential project will generate significantly fewer trips than if the retail site was to be occupied again. Some of the things that we looked at in our study was looking at access and circulation, looking at the multimodal connectivity of the site and how it connects with the surrounding network. We looked at, again, the trip generation of the site. We also did a motor vehicle analysis where we looked at the capacity of the adjacent intersections and the site driveways. And then we also focused on the safety of the surrounding area of the site, where we looked at a speed study, some queuing analysis on the adjacent roadways, and then also a crash data review of the adjacent roadways. Next slide. So as I mentioned, we look at the trip generation for the previously approved grocery store compared to the proposed residential and retail development. During each of the time periods that we look at, so we look at the AM peak hour, when people are going to and from work, or going to work, to school, during that time period. We looked at the PM peak hour, so that's that 5 to 6 hour when people are coming home from work. And then we looked at on a daily basis, and then on a Saturday. And the Saturdays, because that's when retail typically generates a lot of traffic. And so highlighted in yellow, you can see during all of those time periods, the residential development will generate significantly fewer trips compared to that previous retail approved use. I also wanted to note that there are traffic concerns in the area. These primarily stem from the high school. And so we did look at during the morning time period, that 7:15 to 8:15 time period, when we see a large influx of traffic during that, when people are going to be leaving the residential development to go to work, to go to school, as well as cars driving to the high school. Next slide.
One quick question there. Yeah. What month was this done in?
The vehicle counts were done in December of 2022. And great prompting for the next slide. So we did traffic study scoping with City of Rockville staff. So that's where we talk about all of what the city would like to see in our traffic study. We collected traffic counts during December of 2022. Schools were in session. It was a typical weather day where we didn't have a lot of rain, that we can expect normal vehicular activity. And this was also a time when people were going back to work as much as we are seeing today. And then our traffic study results indicated that the project is not anticipated to have impact on the local transportation network. Next slide. And so as part of also our data collection effort, what we did is we collected speed studies. So that's where we go out and see how fast cars are driving on these local roads. So we collected 2 speed studies on Wooten Parkway, one south of Hurley Avenue between the site driveway and Pearlsboro Drive, and then north of Hurley Avenue and the Wooten Parkway intersection. We found that the posted speeds, the average and the 85th percentile speeds do not exceed the posted speed limit by more than 20%. That's the threshold in which vehicles can be ticketed and citations can be issued. And so the speed study results indicate that no additional speed management measures are warranted. And then also at the request of staff, we conducted a queuing analysis at the Wooten Parkway and Hurley Avenue intersection, as well as the Wooten Parkway site driveway. And the average queues indicated that they will be able to be accommodated in the available storage. Next slide. And then another item that we reviewed in our traffic study, again focused on safety, was reviewing crash data history in the area. And so we looked at the available data from January of 2015 to September of 2023, and we only found one crash in that time frame in the area, and that one crash is indicated in orange on the graphic where it's showing near the site driveway. And this incident occurred in 2016, and it was categorized as same direction rear end incident without reported or injuries. Next slide. So as in summary, our traffic study concluded that this project would not have a detrimental impact to the transportation network, and that the project will include several positive transportation elements, as Jason has been going through previously.
We already talked about the Transportation and Mobility Commission. One thing we didn't mention is we agreed, and they requested that we provide a scooter drop-off area, and so we'll be doing that on our plan as well as the other things I mentioned previously. Next slide, please. So we'll just get into some renderings. We'll flip through these quickly and wrap up. This is looking down at the park above the pool parking area. It starts to show you how this space is being defined, how it works with the retail and the townhomes. Next slide, please. This is looking from the other end. Obviously, this image with the plan we just submitted has been updated. We've removed the steps from this location of the park, so the park is a flush entrance in and is accessible. You can see the screen fence I mentioned at the townhouse alley in the background, and you're starting to see how this whole space works with outdoor dining off the retail. Next image, please. This is just a focus on the playground. One of the things EYA does is focus a lot on placemaking, on the vision, and so we had some grade to work with here, and instead of just putting all traditional equipment, we will build stuff into the slope. We'll build slides into the slope, boulders and things to create some natural play elements along with traditional equipment. Next slide, please. This is just an overhead view of the area, give you a sense of scale of the space. Next slide. This is starting to get a look and feel of the neighborhood serving retail and the size. You can see how the outdoor dining starts to work. There is ample space off of the public sidewalk for outdoor dining opportunities, and then a more intimate space and kind of what we see as the key retail space in the corner as you approach the park. Next slide. And this is the other side of the retail building. We're showing the possibility of public art on this face. This is facing Wooten. So you see just an image that's representing a mural that could be placed on the side of that building, and how the outdoor dining can wrap around the retail space. Next slide. So this was the original architecture, more contemporary, modern than what we had heard from the community. Bold colors, dark trim. Next slide, please. Again, this is what we were proposing previously. Next slide. And so we had heard in the in-person meeting with the community that it needed to represent more of what's out there today. There's a lot of brick, a lot of white trim, more detailing, of the traditional aspect around windows and some of the roof lines. Creating porches, so there's a lot of porches out there as well, and so we started to incorporate that look and feel into the single-family architecture. Next slide. This is just a perspective view of some of the single-family architecture. Next slide. Again, another view of those single units. You're good, Nelson. You can flip to the next one. An elevation of how you could start to compose the streetscape with the variety of units having porches, some without, as exist across the street from us on Hurley today, some with brick, some without. Next slide, please. This is the townhome architecture internal to the site. It's 3-story standard units, market rate and affordable units, and then the white above is showing the 4-story if selected as an option. Next slide. This is a rendering before we changed the architecture, but the space and the size of everything is still accurate, and how the internal courtyards and muses could feel in the development. This is looking through a muse. Wooten Parkway would be in the background. Next slide, please. This is along Hurley Avenue, so you can start to see how the units are set back. They are 28 feet off the curb on this frontage, and you can start to see how the streetscape will take shape along Hurley. Next slide. I think that just hit on school capacity. We are meeting all the requirements of the school test. It is the current Montgomery County school test. The data is prescribed in the methodology. We have to calculate this, and so the student generations are 13 in the elementary, 8 in the middle, and 10 in the Wooten High School district, which all have capacity. And then 2 slides, Nelson, forward. We'll just end there. You can go one more, and we'll just leave a plan view up, and if you have any questions. Thank you for your time, too. I know that was a little
Thank
lengthy,
you. I know
but
you've been
important to
waiting
us.
3 years for this.
It
so
has been literally years.
I wanted to honor that, so we gave a little extra time.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate
We
you being
appreciate
here
that.
and for the thorough presentation. I also appreciate the evolution and summary of what you provided to show how you have been trying to listen to community feedback. I also want to know for the listening public that then members of mayor and council and now current members of mayor and council have to abide by ex parte communication. So though we would love to talk to people in the community about it, we are told that we have to limit it to these meetings. And so I just wanted to provide that understanding so that the public knows. But we are reviewing thoroughly all of the feedback that come to us in these presentations. I think there were about 57 or 58 comments from the community here. So there's still a chance for us to be able to gather what has been shared, and staff has also summarized some of those changes. So I wanted to start out with that. Thank you for being here. Thank you for the work and meeting with our staff. I know there's been a lot of staff reviews on this particular project, and making sure that we're also listening to the community representing our residents. I will start off with one question that I'm going to pass off to my colleagues. So one of the things in Rockville we try to do is make sure that the multi-price dwelling unit homes don't look different on the outside. And I looked at the renderings, and it looks like you have a 14-foot townhome with model and an 18 or 20? 20. I understood a lot of, I did some research on a lot of townhomes are in the 18 to 25 range, so now you're in the 14 to 20. My question is, are the 14-foot width only reserved for MPDUs, and how does that align? Maybe this is a question for staff. As well, but how does that align with our desire not to have things look differently from the exterior? Because you will be able to tell a difference.
Yeah, so that requirement exists in pretty much every jurisdiction in the area that we build in. All the projects we've done in Rockville have had that. It's the materials and the form of the unit, the makeup of the exterior facade is where you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. Obviously, there are different unit sizes. Developments have varying unit sizes, but this pattern of the 14-foot versus all at this job it's 20-foot, but at other projects, you know, it could be 16-foot wides, 20-foot wides, 24-foot wide units is kind of what we've done in the city of Rockville historically, and that has never been an issue with meeting the requirement that you're noting, or has it been in any other jurisdiction. There are home size requirements, and as long as you're meeting those home sizes and the bedroom counts, it's been our understanding that you satisfy that requirement, as has taken place on several other projects. We have committed to, we've been working with the affordable housing staff on this job. We have committed to those being 4 stories to provide additional living space for those units, whereas in projects past, they've been 3 stories. This will allow all of the 3 bedrooms to be on the upper 2 floors to create a larger living space on the main living level. And provide an extra bath that wouldn't have otherwise been provided, for instance, at our Tower Oaks project.
Thank you. I'll just turn to my colleagues. Councilmember Van Grack.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First and foremost, I'll mention, you know, as I think the applicant mentioned, I've been at prior meetings and not only a resident of the Rockshire community, but grew up on the other side of the Rockshire Giant, going to that area and this development area as a kid. And before I get into any questions, I just want to commend EYA. I know that this is an area that has been derelict and abandoned for 11 years. And just as was noted in the presentation by staff and by yourself, this is an area that needs development for numerous reasons. So I know this has been a long road, like Madam Mayor says, so I just want to commend EYA for their commitment in these years for looking forward to development. Considering my, interest here, I probably have 30,000 questions, but I'm going to start with just kind of some of my top four. The first question is, as you aptly addressed, with regard to the walkway, the accessible walkway, I didn't happen to see that in the renderings. I don't know if this is for staff or for you. Is that noted? Because it wasn't noted in your pedestrian access presentation either. Is that something that is an addendum or it's in these presentations?
It's in the presentation in the plan where we showed the purple public streets and the blue pedestrian pathways. It was on there. It is in the project plan as submitted. In some of the illustratives that we had shown, we don't show that area of the site. But
okay.
In the overhead view, you can see the blue line all the way to the right. That is that pedestrian pathway.
I see. Okay, so that's the pedestrian path that's going to access and potentially connect with the Rockshire.
And in the engineering plans, it is called out. It's on there as part of the project plan submission. So it's in the plan set.
So can I ask one follow-up question?
Oh, of course.
Yeah. Is that going to be ADA accessible?
So yes and no, and I say that because we don't control all of the property for that pedestrian route. We can only improve that onto our site. We're going to be tying into the path that goes from the edge of our site down to the pool. That's down a hillside, and so this was part of, I wouldn't say our pushback initially, but our hesitancy to provide it, because the path can't be created as an accessible route. It would require, hundreds of feet of retaining walls and switchback ramps on the HOA's property to get down that hillside. We have been working with the association, and they're looking at a path from the southeast corner, so there's a cul-de-sac down there, and they can get on the other side of the pool fence and connect into their walkway that goes around to the clubhouse in an accessible way. And we've offered to help them with that endeavor as the true accessible route. But as many people have noted, they know the slopes don't meet ADA guidelines for accessibility, but this is the route that many use for that purpose regardless. It is the most convenient route, is the way people bring food and things down in there if they're catering an event, or I know food trucks and things have come to the pool, that's where they use. So we're able to bring that connection back, provide it as accessible along our frontage, up into the point where it ties into the existing path on the association site.
Next question is with regard to the commercial space. I noticed that in your presentation that went to the city originally, and as of recent as September, it was 5,500 commercial space, and now we're at 5,200. Was there a reason for the reduction?
Yeah, so the loading got integrated into the top left corner of the building at the request of staff, and frankly, as a requirement of code. We were proposing to have loading on the building be served off of the road, as you see in kind of smaller retail scenarios, or from the truck pulling into the parking lot and just unloading, as you may see in places. Staff requested that that could cause issues with traffic flow and with people trying to get in and out of the parking lot, and so we put it inboard of the retail center in that corner, and that's where the reduction came from.
Is there any way to compensate that to get it back, or that's just going to be?
So you don't lose any tenant space, and frankly, it's the building was a little bit deeper. It was back of house space. So you're not going to use any usable retail space in that. So you're still on the 3 to 5 tenant range, depending the mix of tenants. Honestly, to get it back, in the retail pad, there's not space. So I wouldn't want to start bringing up the discussion of, do we lose houses and lose MPDUs? It's a snowball effect when we start pushing outside of that retail pad.
Okay, so the next two questions, and I know one of it ties into what the mayor was mentioning earlier with regard to traffic, and it's traffic and parking. And I know there's been a lot of discussing about the density in this area and what that would do. I noticed that there's been discussion with regard to parking, and there only seems to be 25 parking spaces that would be available outside of these 60 garages. And similarly, and I know they're kind of both together because we've got the East Issue parking, and I think, if there's 2 Super Bowl parties or 3 Thanksgivings, I don't see how there could potentially be parking availability that would not expand to areas and the streets and the homes and the surrounding areas, a whole neighborhood of which parking isn't even allowed. So I'm not sure where that parking would go. And so I guess, because I've got a similar issue with regard to traffic and traffic studies, but I didn't know if you wanted to comment on the parking availability and how that would play.
In the, if you think about the time as the magenta spaces as shown on the screen, when the pool has rights to use those spaces, the rest of the time it's open to visitor parking. So there's 30 additional spaces, which is pretty much all nights. Most of the time, other than the few months that pool season is going on, if the community center is holding an event, it is their parking. They have the right to it. We have been working and will continue to work with the association through our HOA, through a revised agreement, because the agreement is dated. We're trying to bring it up to current terms. That we will play a part in the enforcement of that with them, because they don't have the means to do it solely themselves. But that is there. A majority of the time, those 30 spaces are there as visitor parking as well. And pretty much, you look at it as nights, and when people would be holding events, that space is there.
Or barbecues, Labor Day, 4th of July.
Yeah. When the pool, there are other events, but the majority of the year there are those additional 30 spaces.
So
each unit, there are 6 units, but each unit has 2 spaces, so there's 120 in the units and then 25 on street. Similarly, you have the retail spaces that, when not in use, can be used as overflow parking when retail times aren't affect overnight spaces. So if you have visitors staying overnight, things like that. So they're in a way, that's more visitor parking than you see on a lot of projects of this nature, of a lot of the projects we've put through the city, if you combine all those spaces and you look at the visitor ratio per the number of units.
And finally, going into traffic, because I know you talked about traffic studies and counts. This is an area this is a development that literally has had no development for 11 years. And I noticed you mentioned traffic impact. And in talking with the city with regard to this area, I understand that if you look at the area coming into Wooten High School to make a right, they've actually, because of the traffic impact on Wooten Parkway, removed a right turn on red in that area because of the impact of the traffic from the 7 to 8 area, 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. time period. I noticed you noted counts of just general time periods, but did your traffic study also notice a large impact of delays which occurred in that area between 7 and 8 a.m.?
So I think that you're asking about, we did counts, and then did we do a study of those counts, I believe is your question. And yes, so what we did is we did our traffic counts, and those traffic counts inform our analysis, where we have to look at the capacity of the adjacent intersections. And so we did a study where we looked at each of our site driveways, as well as the Wooten Parkway and Hurley Avenue intersection, and to see if how those intersections would operate. And so we did look at those, and we found that they were in acceptable standards for this, based on the city's guidelines.
But was that compared to presuming there was a retail outlet there, or the existing situation, which is an abandoned
lot? So we look at 3 different time periods. So we look at existing conditions. So that's like just the counts from December 2022. Then we look at background conditions. And so that would be with the Giant, if it was fully occupied. And then we look at if the residential mixed use development was to come in. And so we looked at those 3 different scenarios. So we look at using our existing counts with the residential project, and that's where we found that we were within acceptable levels compared to the city's standards.
Okay, those are my top 4 issues.
Thank you. I'm going to pause for 1 minute because I made a pledge to my colleagues that I would pause around 10 o'clock. I do appreciate this conversation, but I just are we okay to continue this discussion till about 10:25 or so? And then we'll do old new business. Just want to make sure. Okay. Honoring the pledge.
Thank you.
I did send 14 questions to staff, just so you have it we can share it with you after this meeting. I'm not going to ask those all right now, but I do have some similar questions about the traffic, and I would like to get more detail on what was provided to the Planning Commission on that front. Also want to make sure that it wasn't like December 22nd when, so just, that is something I know there's been a lot of tension, particularly with Wooten High School, the parking and the traffic. So any additional information you can provide is helpful. I would also note that if we, in the next time this comes back to us, can have a summary of the changes that you all have made. It's in the PowerPoint, but not necessarily as articulated in the briefing. And the third is I didn't see a lot in terms of the electrification in the actual document that we received. So if we can have that next time that comes back to us, that'll be greatly appreciated. Councilmember Jackson, you had your hand up. Let's go.
All right. So thanks, first of all, for the presentation. It was pretty thorough, and it's nice to see you again.
You as well.
So I just had a couple of questions. Actually, Councilman Van Grack stole a lot of what I was planning to ask. Well, the mayor did too, actually. But I want to make clear one thing you were talking about, the path down to the pool. Somebody had a comment about they've had emergencies where the ambulance had to use that path. So I guess my question, and I think it's already been answered, but just want to clarify. You are going to have a wide enough path, or it's still going to be able to be used like that, like it was used priorly.
The path is 5 feet wide.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure how the ambulance used it previously. I guess, there is space around on the sides of the path. There will still be some space off our site on the church side. We do have some grass on our site as well. I mean, I guess you could. The emergency vehicle access for the pool is from the other side of the pool.
Okay.
It's off the dead-end alley. There is a retaining wall that's built. There's a kind of like a paved drive aisle that goes off the road that allows emergency vehicles to get down to the pool and down to the gate. I'm sure they've had, things happen where they've come in the other way. They get to that side and they need to get in, right, as quickly as possible. But the intent for access for the pool is from the other side.
No, thanks for clarifying that. That stuck out at me. ADA concerns, as the mayor noted, I thank you, for taking that into account. I know I was reading how you have taken that into account, and then your presentation, you talked about taking the steps out and going out down to the park, which is really important. I noticed that in the comments that there was a lot of consternation about the trees and about, I guess you're going to be replacing, or they say, that you're going to be replacing mature, healthy trees with younger and less full trees. Can you maybe talk about that?
Yeah, so about halfway down Hurley from Wooten, around the corner all the way down Wooten, there's a kind of stand of trees, some in good shape, some in bad shape, a lot of invasives under there. There's some berming that exists there today. So the retail center was inboard facing. So the retail was back of house was facing Hurley and Wooten, the opposite of what you would do today if you were building retail that you were trying to make survive, right? It has no visibility off the corner. It faces inside of the site. And so the berms were put in to further screen the back of house retail. And so with the new development, a lot of that berming goes away. And so the comments to some degree are correct. We have worked through several iterations where we've increased the amount of that berm at the corner, maybe the most critical point at the corner, where we've increased the amount of berm being saved and thereby the trees being saved on top of it. When we took the homes that were facing Wooten Parkway, the first time we came up with the 60-unit plan, they had front doors facing Wooten. When we pulled that off and away from there, we also started to save some trees moving further down Wooten. But there are, there's not a ton of trees on site today, but the trees that are there, the majority of them are all right in that area, and a good amount of those are being taken down with the proposed development, and we're preserving what we can and then planting back 500 and, am I getting there? Is it 355 or 535? I think it's 535 new trees on the site, but obviously not planting them at the size of trees that are out there today. You're planting them at new plant stock of 3 to 5 caliper inches, the size of the trunk.
I had one more question. I'm not really sure this is directed at you or if this is directed at staff, but the traffic studies, you know, I've heard several times for residents in prior developments that the EY did with the farmstead, and they were concerned about the traffic studies are skewed or biased, and I saw the same comments for Rockshire. So I was just wondering if staff could address, you know, the people that are in charge of the traffic studies, how they are put together, what's taken into consideration, and really what the guidelines are, just to kind of give a little bit of visibility into that process. So maybe we can put to rest this idea that they're skewed or biased in some way.
Farmers Mukhtari with our Traffic and Transportation.
Good evening, Council Member. This is Farmers Mukhtari from Traffic and Transportation. To answer your question, the comprehensive transportation review document that is approved by Mayor and Council identifies the procedures and the methodology that has to be used to do the traffic studies. And we require the applicant traffic consultant to follow those requirements and those procedures and methodologies. They have to do trip generation for the proposed development using the standard that is used across the nation. It's called the Institute of Transportation Trip Generation Manual. So all the trip generation that you see for the shopping center that was there and it's not vacant now, or for the proposed residential, was using those equations to generate the trips. Then they had to follow the methodology to analyze the intersection by assigning those trips to the road network and then basically adding to the existing traffic volume counts, taking account that basically the site was entitled to a shopping center that has been vacant, but it could be there again if the applicant chooses to. So they have to take credit for those trips, and then they basically take those trips out and then put it back in for the new development. So they follow those procedures as outlined in the CTR, and then they analyze it. Because the roadways are controlled by intersection, our CTR requires to do analysis of intersection for the level of service. And that's what the findings that the consultant mentioned to you was about, to look at the level of services that resulted from looking at those three scenarios: existing, background, and total, gave you the level of service analysis and finding that we made. Does that answer your question, Council Member?
Yes, it does. Thank you so much, and thanks
Thank
for
you.
your time. Thank you for your presentation, and thanks for keeping with it and trying to take into account the residents and the staff. And I know it's been a long process. It's going to be a little bit longer, but I do appreciate your persistence. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Valeri, and then Councilmember Miles.
I will go fast. Hi there. So I saw that you had the Transportation and Mobility Commission, kind of gave them a presentation. I would implore you to also present to the Rockville Pedestrian Advocacy Committee and the Rockville Bicyclist Advisory Committees. You may be like, why? Those are like three totally, they all sound transportation. However, from RBAC, you're going to get feedback on how your plan either complements or conflicts with the city's bikeway master plan. From RPAC, you're going to hear how your plan either complements or conflicts with the newly passed pedestrian master plan. So if you haven't been presented with those guidelines already, which I hope that you have been, they are both two very good groups of folks that I would implore you, because I would want to hear that integration, maybe upon your return in front of us or in answer else ways. So there's that. And I'm presuming that you are the tree gentleman back there as well. I'm kind of psyched about that, because I'll be talking about landscaping, unless you guys want to talk about the Vision Zero pedestrian stuff first.
I'm happy to hit it in any order you'd like.
Sure. And then I will, that's the last thing on my thing. The landscaping, very unclear, except that I'm a bit of a native plant nerd. Can you walk through the trees that will be planted in ground versus what is going to be in containers? What is native, what is not non-native? And yeah, I'll stop there.
For forest conservation, James, are we required to do native species?
So we are required to, no, not, oh, sorry.
There will be very few container plants to hit that piece of it. There will be some around the retail, but all the trees for credit and to meet the reforestation requirements will all be planted in ground, which is almost every tree on the site.
So I figured.
Yeah. Good evening, James Buckheister with FICA. The planting, there's a plant schedule in the project plan, and for the most part, as far as I can tell in here, outside of some of the junipers that are used for screening, most of the plant material is going to be native or selections of native plants.
Cultivars?
Cultivars, yeah, there are cultivars on a couple of these. For example, I guess the serviceberry is an autumn brilliance, and so a lot of these things are selected for form, flower, function, that sort of thing. So. Yeah.
Mostly, I was just thinking through it as a community that very clearly values their trees and talks a lot about the need for mature trees. I don't think we often talk about the importance of the trees being native, especially to the Piedmont part of Maryland. So, what was that?
Can I just clarify for staff? I believe this may be, maybe I don't know if we have the right staff here, but so don't feel free to say, I get back to you. In the past, mayor and council, I thought there was a change to how developments happen for native trees to be planted. So just maybe making sure that the new council is aware of what was passed. But I do remember that coming forth because that actually went to the Environment Commission, if I recall correctly. But if you could get back to us, that would be greatly appreciated.
Sean Ryan is also online.
Okay.
I'm not sure if he has any information to provide the mayor and council at this time.
Yeah, and it can come back to us in an email. I just wanted to make sure that everyone is clear.
Okay.
Thank you.
No, and thank you. I love Serviceberry, by the way, so I'm very excited about that. And I think going forward, and not just for you, but I mean in general for staff, that would be interesting to note. And then if it's not a requirement, which I hope it is, knowing which ones are native and non-native for people who aren't plant geeks like me would be helpful. And then yes, I would love to hear more about the Vision Zero framework and our plans and how your project will dovetail with it, hopefully.
Thank you.
Dr. Miles.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I apologize to staff and the presenters. I drafted questions Thursday, but didn't know to whom to send them. I'll just ask them, and then I can, get answers offline at some point, and then present it back to the community. I am excited, again, that you all came back. I'm excited that the houses will be fully electric. I'm just super amped internally, so thank you all for that. Top line, you might be able to get to some of these questions now. Some of them are kind of rapid fire and quick response, but others probably a little more in depth. The one thing I wanted to note, I couldn't get a sense when looking at the schematics, was how much spaces are between the single-family homes, roughly?
Yeah, I believe there is 8 feet between those homes, James. It might be 10.
10.
Is that kind of like tower ups?
I think it's 10 feet because of code requirement for windows joining each other. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Okay. One thing to the point that our colleague raised about getting pedestrian input, I was just thinking about that new street or entrance, the new street that we'll be crossing onto Wooten, and whether or not there would be some sort of hawk signal or something for pedestrians. That stretch of the whole Millennium Trail is well used, but particularly down there, I don't have to tell others, particularly Councilmember Van Grack, how many people use it. I'm just worried that, to the points that he raised, that people will be hit.
At the intersection or at our new it's
the
not
new
a new
entrance
entrance.
crosses in that. I guess the one that
That's
next to Wooten.
It's an existing driveway that we'll redo and put a pedestrian refuge in the middle, but there is one existing there today to serve the the parking lot and the townhome community to our south. So on the bottom left of the page, correct? Yeah, so that entrance exists today. We're going to upgrade it a little bit. And there is a signal there today. We're going to be making some signal timing adjustments, I believe, and some, it's all right here.
Yeah, on that slide, you can see that we're going to be adding high visibility crosswalks to the eastern and southern leg, a pedestrian refuge, and detection for the site driveway, so that way the signal is triggered when cars arrive, and that way Wooten Parkway can stay green.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Sir.
If I may, Councilman Dr. Mars,
Yes, sir.
that intersection for the crossing of the Wooden Parkway does include pedestrian push buttons in addition to the crosswalk. So it's better than the hawk signal that you were suggesting. So it's a signalized intersection with pedestrian push button.
Right. Thank y'all. Thank you very much.
On that point, FM, though, I think we could do better than painted crosswalks. Oh, yeah, sorry, my bad. I just wanted to throw that out there. I think we could make some improvements. That would make it better for everybody.
Thank you, council members. Let me go back to, are you done with your
I
questions?
just had
or
a few
one
more, but
Okay.
I'll make them quick.
Thank you.
Again, this is more of me making a point than anything else, but y'all get back to me. On packet page 264, I think the school capacity numbers are probably an underestimate. Just knowing that everybody who's going to buy a house there is going to send their kids to Wooten, and it's already packed. Slide 20, I was trying to figure out what is the purpose of the dead-end alley? Is it just to serve the garages that will be back there?
It serves the 6 townhomes. There is a door in the back of the retail, back of house use,
Got
but
it. Yes,
there's
sir.
no vehicular use for the retail there, but it's serving those units, yes.
And last question, slide 20, the sidewalk at the bottom, right above the retail there is, so keep going north, keep going up. Yeah, that one right there. Does it connect to anything?
That sidewalk that's the back of the retail sidewalk connection. So this is showing all areas where there are sidewalk. That basically allows people to come out. They can walk over to the retail. They can take stuff over to the trash and loading area. But the vehicles that serve the trash and loading won't
be able
be
to come
going
in.
in the alley
We
anymore.
do have other
because
cars coming from the houses though, in that alley, right?
They will, excuse me,
The cars coming from the alleys, cars from the houses.
will
that
be
have
used.
garages. Got it.
Yeah, they
I
can't
got-
they can't park in the alley or in the driveways in the rear.
Yes, sir.
There's 2 garage spaces, but they have to obviously move throughout the alley.
Got it. I was just thinking about connectivity more broadly. I guess I just have to see it. I saw it kind of referenced to slightly in some of the renderings, like the cartoons or images. Just making sure that sidewalks connect. I dislike having just.
Yeah, with alleys like that
yeah,
that face the public spaces, the park, we try to block those off as much as possible. It is back of house of the house as well, not just back of house of retail. And so we showed that screen fence that kind of separates people. Keep the public from walking behind kind of people's private houses, things like that. More of a security and aesthetics thing. Everywhere else around the site, fronts of units, anywhere, the Millennium Trail to the pool to the church, we try to, encourage those connections. But that's kind of an area we try to discourage where we can.
Understood. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Shaw.
So thank you very much for your presentation. It was very thorough. My question is about traffic. I know that in the study you don't have there's a number of unknown factors. And I know at this point you haven't determined any retail. Can you just talk about to what extent that would change the impact of traffic? Currently, I guess you're anticipating like an ice cream shop, a bodega, a salon, wellness center. Can you talk about if these types of retailers are not leasing the space, if there's a change, can you talk about how that will impact traffic?
Yes, can you go to slide 23? So when we did our trip generation, just for your exact concerns, we don't want to redo this traffic study 4 times or every time there's a new retail use. So what we do is we look at the most conservative use. So we look at the use that's going to generate the most amount of traffic. And so as you can see on this slide, for our fast casual retail, we try to overestimate reasonably the number of trips that are going to be coming. And so we looked at fast casual retail for 5,500 square feet. And so that is the highest trip generator of a type of use that could go into this space. And so we've kind of already done what you're asking, where we looked at the most possible trips that could possibly go in.
Thank you.
And as part of the review that we did, these are the trip caps that this development would have if there is any substantial change in the use that basically generates more trip than is assumed, then they have to come back and do a adequacy finding.
And to clarify, it says significantly fewer trips than the existing site. I think my colleague mentioned earlier. When you say existing site, you mean like as if it was used for commercial,
If the
not
50,
just what it's used like. That it's not used.
no,
at
no,
all
not
right
today.
now.
If the 52,000 square feet were leased up today, as it would have the right to do tomorrow, if someone was willing to do it, it would have significantly fewer trips than what's already approved to be used on the site or what's vested there.
Understood. Thank you. So I know that a lot of us had several other questions. I don't know, Councilmember Fulton, if you have any that you want to share now.
No, I like sit back and let everybody else ask the questions. I'm good for right now. Thanks.
Good. Perhaps, I know that you'll be coming back around the March timeframe for a public hearing, or that we'll have a public hearing. Is that right? According to.
That's to be determined.
Yeah.
Okay.
Um,
All right. We'd love to keep it moving on schedule. I'm sure you would too. But I'm just going to encourage my colleagues to send questions so that the next time we come, that we can have them, shared in advance and perhaps get some written commentary, if that's okay. All right. And then the other thing I'll say is the next time they come before us, I'd recommend that we slot a 1.5 hour time estimate versus 45 minutes. This is such an important topic. I want to respect your time and make sure we give it the adequate amount that it deserves. So thank you for being here this evening. Thank you for being on this journey with us. And thank you to all the residents who provided comments.
Yeah, thank all of you for your time tonight and your patience. We appreciate it.
Thank you. All right. Thank you to my colleagues. I know that we are a little bit behind schedule, but I think we'll be able to make that up quickly. So moving to our mock agendas, does anyone have any commentary? I know I sent one comment. Any other comments on future agenda? If not, I'll move forward. If you're okay, then. This is for Mr. Simino. Can you hear me?
I just wanted to make sure that you're aware that we do have administrative function on January 8th that starts at 6.
Thank you very much for noting that. We'll have administrative session on January, you said 8 at 6. I do want to also note that on the JEDI item of the agenda, that is the Justice, Equity, Diversity, Inclusion, the question I shared is whether we can have a broader update. The title currently includes the interfaith update, but I know that we've been waiting to get a general plan update. I know we're not going to hear the plan, but just where we've been and where we're going, plus interfaith. That's going to be incorporated into that.
Yes, Madam Mayor, we're discussing your question right now, and there's some discussion about integrating something possibly in the retreat when we bring the discussion on the tool that we're introducing. So we'll have a response for you back on a plan to do something.
Perfect. And the retreat tool is a framework by which, a lens by which we're going to look at all things, but there's still a desire to have, what are we looking at in terms of the JEDI plan development?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
perfect.
And Mr. Davis will be with us there anyway, so we're trying to figure out whether we can give you a preview of where we are and where we're going especially with the mayor and council. There's a proposal for a next step there, so we're talking about maybe integrating that in with that same session.
I'm open to that. I do want the public to also hear it. So I would encourage a broad update on that on January 8th. I'll turn to my colleagues. Were you shaking your head or?
Oh, no, I'm agreeing.
Okay. I'm hearing agreement from the body. So is it everyone good? Thumbs up? So we're hearing all body, if that's direction. Clear? Okay, thank you. Anything else on the future agenda? All right, old new business. Councilmember Van Grack.
So following up on our discussion that we were having earlier with regard to the May and June anti-Semitism resolution that was put forward by the town of Chevy Chase. I know that there was a question of whether there was a passage, which the mayor and council implied there was. I would just like to put forward, to the extent there needs to be a procedural process for us to make sure that it was properly passed, I would make that motion.
Thank you. So can I just help clarify, just so we understand the motion? So this would be, for background for those who are watching, we joined with at least a dozen other municipalities. It was initiated in Chevy Chase to support a anti-Semitism resolution. Actually, Rockville's name is on that resolution, and we just want to formally go ahead and approve that resolution so that we can honor what we signed on to.
And make it to the extent that we can add it to the resolution from earlier today so that there is no confusion.
Thank you. And we did note in our resolution earlier today that we would make space for that line in the introductory paragraph. So with that, I'm hearing a motion. Is there a second? Dr. Miles, thank you for second. I'm going to just open for discussion. Am I hearing that? Am I, City Attorney, do you have any commentary? Or I just want to make sure I'm pausing to.
I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page. So what the mayor and council is doing is adopting the resolution that was sent over by Chevy Chase without the edits. Okay.
Because Rockville's name is already as a signatory, so we just want to make it official.
Okay.
Okay. All right. There has been a motion and a second. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Thank you. It's unanimous. I have a few quick things. So I think most of us have heard about what's going on at the county level in terms of the county has to pull officers to other jurisdictions. This is happening to District 1 as well as Gaithersburg. And there are a number of impacts that our city staff are dealing with to help make sure that Rockville public safety is continuing to stay on track, and also that we might look at adding 6 officers. Understanding the process of the county as how they're going to be reviewing this. I understand that they're going to potentially introduce it at a January agenda. There has to be a public hearing. It has to go to the GO committee as well as the public safety committee. There'll be ample opportunities for mayor and council to write a letter as well as to testify. So I'm asking if you all would agree to allow me to help support this item and getting funding for our city. I know that we all support public safety, but I do strongly recommend that we do both testimony and letter. So if you guys are open to this, I will entertain a motion. Dr. Miles.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that we have our mayor, Ashton, work with staff on both testimony and drafting a letter as was discussed.
Second.
Okay, it's been motion made and seconded. All those in favor? It is unanimous. Thank you. Okay, so the next thing is legislative priorities. So the last mayor and council discussed a series of legislative priorities. There was a memo sent to mayor and council on our approach. There's also a timely need for us to consider the bond bill. The previous mayor and council supported one project that was put forth and then writing a letter to the county on another. One project was the David School improvements that would look at ADA enhancements. It would look at making some entrance improvements. It would look at a shelter, and that was for $500,000. That was one of the pieces that we already submitted. We have heard that there are other jurisdictions submitting too, and so there's an interest to submit a second, and we need to discuss that briefly. Linda Moran, if you would please provide input for us.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of the council. Glad to be here. Also, Director Chestnut is online as well, so he'll be available to help with any technical questions. So yes, there is interest in the city submitting a second bond bill. And so staff, CMO staff has conferred with Rec and Parks, and we're proposing that the Rockville Municipal Swim Center outdoor playground project be proposed to be submitted to District 17 for consideration. We think that this would be looked on very favorably by the General Assembly. It touches a broad audience. Over 300,000 of our residents and visitors heavily utilize this facility. It has a broad community purpose. It's shovel ready, and the legislature tends to look at projects that are shovel ready very favorably. It's got solid funding, so we would be looked at as having a good funding plan. And it would be in the amount of $500,000. So staff is recommending, and Tim, please add anything if you'd like. We think this would be a viable project for a potential second bond bill for Rockville.
Evening, Madam Mayor, members of council. And thank you, Linda. I would just clarify a couple points. The project at Swim Fitness Center is not quite shovel ready. The design is at 95%. So we are practically shovel ready, but I don't want you to get the wrong impression. But it is also fully funded. So both of those factors should be looked upon favorably by the General Assembly.
Thank you, Mr. Chestnut. And I should also just add for everyone's knowledge that we do have a delegate who's interested in supporting this project. So we have some intel as well. So that is on the bond. And the memo you shared with us also looked at getting back to an approach of increased engagement with our delegation at the state level and federal level. And so I just want to open the floor to say I support what has been proposed. And again, had a chance to talk to Mr. Simoneau and Ms. Moran about what the other jurisdictions are doing. These kinds of meetings are important to not only have strong relationships, but to solve problems that happen, but also to look for funding opportunities. So I just wanted to put those two things on the floor for us to discuss.
Madam Mayor, if I could, we also have a request from Senator Kagan to in fact visit our bond bill projects this Thursday. So this is very timely. If you would make a decision tonight, we would have good knowledge of both projects for possibly her to see.
Thank you. What say you, team? I was seeing nodding heads, so I'll entertain a motion, or I'll take a question if you have one first.
I have a question. So is this the only, well, and it doesn't sound like it's completely shovel ready, but are there options for us to look at? Is this the only possible second project for this bond bill? And I'm curious to, and I apologize, and my hearing is not the best, but and Tim's voice was kind of dipping there a little bit, but it wasn't clear to me. I thought that these sort of projects truly had to be shovel ready in order to even put them forward, but it sounded like Tim said this one it's going to be, but not right now. So I'd like clarity there, unless I misheard you, and that's always possible given my hearing deficit. But I would like to hear more than just one idea on things to put forward. Looking at it again, and I understand where everyone's coming from on the swim center, and I would like to spread the love around, seeing as we have a big project coming to the swim center too.
Mr. Chestnut, I will just, while you're getting your audio up, note that to my understanding from the swim center that it is a very costly project, and there have been cost increases happening there. So this would help to complete the project that was previously supported in the budget. And I also want to note that the previous mayor and council really want to put forth David Skull Park as the other option to really also support equity. If this swim project is put forth, I do think it's important for our project brief to note the equity aspect as well. There are many people who have access to private pools, but having access to a public pool is very important as a regional access point for our city. So I think that's an important point.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. And for Councilwoman Valeri, for all intents and purposes, this project is shovel ready. I see you leaning forward. You're not hearing me?
Slightly low, but I know there's some WebEx audio issues this meeting. So what I heard is that you said for all intents and purposes, this is shovel ready. It's just that I know that's in design and it's 95% complete. So you're just, by the time the 5% is needed, and as I understand it, by the time the bond bill is awarded, that we'll be in a very good shape to move forward. I'm seeing shaking heads, but I'm just trying to translate. If I got that wrong, let me know.
You got that correct. correctly.
Thank you, and thank you for the clarification, and apologies. I know we're having issues, but my apologies. So that sounds great. Thanks.
Thank you. So we've discussed moving forward with increased engagement as well as an additional bond bill item to include. Unless there are any other questions, I'll entertain a motion. Anyone want to make a motion on that?
Sure, I'll give it a go. I'd like to introduce a motion to support the memo on increased engagement on these issues, as well as add a request for additional bond bill regarding the swim center.
Thank you. Motion made. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Councilmember Jackson has a second. All those in favor, please say aye and raise your hand. It is unanimous. Thank you. Also, just wanted to note on this topic, I did send a note to the county executive just reiterating our support for Lincoln High School. Lincoln High School is not actually a school in use right now, but it is a very historic building, one of the oldest African-American buildings in our county, and played a very pivotal role to education. There's a lot of discussion on potential uses of that building, but first it needs to be restored, and it's in, there has been some county funding on that. So, just noted that to my colleagues and to the public that we did follow up on that last week as an offer of support should they put forth a bond bill. Councilmember Van Grack.
So I was going to have a larger old new business, but it's now 10:47, so I'm going to try to make this a lot shorter. I know, Madam Mayor, you and I have talked about engaging with the local schools and the youth communities about trying to recognize some of the more accomplishments of some of the youth within our city, and maybe it's a matter of putting it on January 8th, the idea of putting together some type of quarterly action by the staff to reach out to some of the schools and youth centers to try to find out some of these accomplishments that we could recognize. So that's something that, instead of discussing now, I'd like to potentially move to January 8th. But at the same vein, last month, I know that Richard Montgomery High School volleyball team won the state championship. And I don't want to go too long without recognizing the accomplishment. So maybe instead of addressing either one of those issues now, we could potentially put on for January 8th both the idea of trying to get staff to have quarterly reaching out to the youth community so we can recognize, but at the same vein, recognize the Richard Montgomery volleyball team. Unless there's an addition, either team or individuals that have had a youth accomplishment that we could recognize on the 8th.
Thank you. There are, like, the National Merit Scholars is a big one that I know that Councilmember Miles has raised in the past. I'm wondering, we have a discussion in the retreat on how we do certificates of recognition. I think that is a really important point. We hear of things that go wrong. We have to recognize what's going right in our community, particularly among our youth. I wonder if under the item that we're talking about, processes for certificates of recognition and recognitions in general, resolutions, et cetera, if we could at least include that process discussion and then look to agendize, bringing in the volleyball team as well as other groups that we might look to in the future. I think if we can have a systemic look at whether we're doing bi-monthly or quarterly, or reach out to our schools to see, what fantastic things are happening and how can we honor and support our youth, that would be something that can feed us for future recognition opportunities. So, Dr. Miles.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thanks to Councilmember Van Grack on this one. And I would wonder, I'm going to be hopefully attending my first meeting as liaison to the Education Commission tomorrow to see if from an outreach perspective, I know y'all are stretched thin, if that's something that they could take on as well or contribute as well. But I'd certainly support recognizing our talent, particularly the volleyball team.
Councilmember Fulton.
You just made me think of one thing. The Youth Commission would also be a good input if we ever, the Youth Commission would also be a great input to collecting that information. But, we just talked a lot about how to collect the things that our youth do, how to find them, how to, I think that there had been some exchange earlier about also being thoughtful about the variety of ways that we can recognize. The default of the proclamation is a good one, and it's a good tool, but I think, Mayor, you had suggested thinking about all of the different ways that we can recognize, and I want to make sure we did that as well, rather than it's the supply and the demand.
Yeah, thank you. So we'd like to have that retreat discussion. and also look at how we can recognize the volleyball team and others. Okay. And then on the topic of youth, just to raise for the public, we shared with staff the idea of potentially restarting a formal internship opportunity. It would be cost neutral to the city with some rise if we plug into the MCPS program. I know staff is going to be looking into that, and there was, I think, general support, but just want to be able to give our city manager feedback from all of us. Is everyone in good with giving direction? I'm just going to say, I'm going to make a motion that he would look into that. Summarize.
Yes, a motion to look into it, but I wanted to be clear that like there is a real feasibility question, and like can we provide actual good opportunities? So if we're looking to say look into it, yes.
Second by Councilman Van Grack. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, great. Thank you. There were several other items, but I know that we are running low on time. So there was a discussion about the Farmstead District. I'm wondering if that's something we can either do briefings on or agendize. Not the Farmstead District, the Farmstead itself, and looking at charrettes. So I know that if there is no feedback, you're moving forward with the charrettes, but perhaps we need to do a briefing on it so we can talk about the outline. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I agree with that. You know, I think that there needs to be more community input before we move forward with the Surratt. So I would be in favor of in briefings or you know, taking it up at a later agenda. I feel like the last input that we had was about 6 years old now from the community. So I think that we need more input from the community before we move forward with our general plan.
Thank you. And it could be that community input is part of a charrette. Right.
Yeah.
So and to note, the previous mayor and council did fund a charrette process. I have heard from multiple colleagues that there's an interest in, you know, having community input be a part of that. I think that was almost unanimous in feedback from people.
So we can include in our charrette proposal community input if that satisfies the mayor and council, but if you want more before we move forward, we'd welcome either briefings or if we want to bring it back on agenda, but if that satisfies the interest of the mayor and council, we can take that feedback and promise to include that and report back to you when we give you a plan on the charrette, what the community input component would be.
Can we do both of those things?
We can do both if you wish.
Are you good with that, team? Okay, thumbs up.
So both as in bringing it back on agenda?
Just as a briefing, so that we know what's going on and moving forward with
And do you want that brought back to you after we proceed or now? Taking the feedback now, coming up with a plan, getting a consultant, then bring it back to you when we kick off the charrette?
Correct.
Yes, okay.
Yeah, as long as you're including community feedback in the
Yes.
charrette process.
Yes.
Perfect.
Okay,
Thank you very much. All right. That concludes what I know of for old new business. I will entertain a motion to adjourn, but I want to say before we do that, happy holidays. It's been a very long year with a lot of hard work. I want to thank our staff, our residents who've been so engaged, all of our volunteers. There are thousands of hours provided by our volunteers to make the city great, and I appreciate every one of you.
And Happy New Year to everybody as well.
Happy New Year. See you in Jan. All right. A motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
All right. All those in favor? All right. It's unanimous. Thank you. Happy holidays, everyone.